Hear ye, hear ye! Welcome to the Crash Chords podcast.
Those are not good. No. Hear ye, hear ye?
Yes. We're going to be focusing on, like, Ren Fair related stuff, so it seemed appropriate.
You said those. Are you pluralizing the hear ye's?
You went oldish English to, like, very, very modern vernacular.
My good gentles, it is clear that none of thee dost know how to speak proper Elizabethan English in any way, shape, or form.
Forsooth, my liege, forsooth.
I'm going to shoot thee.
Forsooth? I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Thou would not possess a pistol.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, no, that wouldst.
Yeah.
No, that wouldst. Yeah, that does put in the... But that's, it would be very hard to come by back in thou day.
Stop speaking, Steve.
Thou does not make it Elizabethan.
You were listening to the dulcet tones and very British accent of J. Robert Coppola the third of the seventh generation. I don't know, making it up. J. Robert Coppola, a.k.a. Joe Rude, is our guest again.
I'm going to need some documentation
Rude right.
He said rude right.
I did
Didn't
say
say
Rude right.
rude or anything like that.
Not like last time.
Last time he was on the show, he was promoting Kings of Karaoke, which he goes by Joe Rude for.
I'm still part of the Kings
which
of
he's
Karaoke.
still part of. But we are having him here today to discuss a little bit about his acting career and how he is a regular every summer at the York Rennaissance Fair. He's a musician there, an actor there, a fighter there. And so we brought him on for that. In the spirit of talking about acting, as the listeners and my co-host know, I was in L.A. last week for the 24-hour plays, the L.A. branch.
Wait. You forgot to do the hair flip. I was in L.A. and it was, like, totally awesome.
I'm sorry, you can't do the hair flip without all this hair. Whoosh.
For those listening...
We need a camera upgrade, we really do.
Yeah, we do.
That's why I did the whoosh.
That's
the whoosh.
No.
Just like, were you born with it?
No, it's just Maybelline.
Oh, okay.
Good. That was good. So I was working for the 24-hour plays with the 24-hour company, Mont Blanc and Urban Arts Partnership, which is for underprivileged children in tough neighborhoods, get them the arts education that they deserve and need. There was a lot of great talent there. A heavily music-influenced show because there were a lot of musicians acting. Alanis Morissette, Kelly Osbourne, and Gavin Rossdale were all amongst the cast. And I had a wonderful moment where me and Wilmer Valderrama geeked out over Gavin Rossdale. And then he sat down at our table and ate dinner with us. It was very awkward.
Gavin Rossdale did.
Yes. It was very awkward, but hilarious.
I love how you just name dropped Wilmer.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That was pretty awesome.
I also had my theater debut during the 24-hour plays.
You were in a show?
One of the plays that was written... so all the plays are written overnight within 4 or 5 hours. One of the plays written was called Apocalypse Recently. And it's about an apocalypse that happened. And
I love that.
The opening of the play is it's dark on stage and there's a group of people talking and chatting silently with a voiceover by Gavin Rossdale. And so I was one of the extras. Before we went out on stage, me and the handful of extras, it was a couple of ADs, a co-producer named Tito, and a few others. The director of that play was Fred Savage. So before we go on stage, he comes over and goes, "Are you my dead people? Great. Here's what you're going to do." And then explains how we're going to fall, what our cue is. And so I took stage direction from Fred Savage, which was kind of amazing.
Yes.
I can't even make fun of you for it this week. Do you have anything, John?
Well, I already said the whole Valderrama, the name
drop
dropping.
thing.
Like, oh yeah, no, me and Wilmer were hanging out. And then
I'm just going to toss my hair again.
But the plays went really well. This year was the first year where they were all like pretty much without error or noticeable error. And there was actually a very serious drama written by I'm going to blank on his name now, but written by an actor who's also a writer, but more known for David Crumhurst. Crumhurst? Yeah, I believe that's it.
Okay, that's the first one I didn't recognize. Who's that?
The lead from Numbers, the TV show Numbers.
Oh, Oh.
See, even the
he's-
ones you don't recognize are ones you recognize.
He's really cool. I love him.
He's recently been
I'm
writing.
so upset that they kind of canceled Numbers.
He'd recently been writing,
Kinda
and
canceled.
his show was the most emotional, which was really cool.
It's like they canceled Chuck. It took like 2 or 3 seasons for them to actually
Look,
cancel
guys,
it.
I'm still a little sore about canceling Firefly. Okay.
Yeah, but it's been a while.
Are you
Time to get
now?
over it. But the shows went really well. It was a lot of fun, and it's great to be back. Though I really didn't want to leave LA because it's nice having heat without muggy, which I realized didn't realize was a thing because I'd been in New York for so long.
Actually, no. New York, we get the heat with the humidity. In LA, they perfected it.
Yeah, they fine-tuned their weather.
Well, they know how to have 102% humidity without rain.
And a music reference, when we got to the Santa Monica Pier, all I could think of was the song Santa Monica by Everclear. So, there's that.
It's also probably nice to have celebrities without the snobbery.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is all for charity, so yeah, they're volunteering their time, and the shows they put on were great. It was for a good cause. The students this year, because every year there are students in the production, this year the 2 students were actors, and one of the kids, Oscar, was just incredible. His comic timing was spot on. He's just going to college now, and I'm excited to see where he goes and if he ends up on TV, because he was very good.
Well, the next time you go to LA, we will probably strangle you and usurp your life. So thank you.
I was gonna pull a James Gum and just completely skin him and wear him to LA.
Thanks a lot, Bolton.
That wasn't creepy at all.
Okay.
I'm gonna find your book one day. I know this with this whole plan laid out.
If I get Anthony Hopkins to help me, is it better?
Just put the lotion in the basket. Thank you. Before we get into this week's album, moving on, I want Joe to talk a little bit about what he does at the Ren Fair now, because I know that your gig is a little different this year.
A little bit, yeah. This year at the New York Rennaissance Fair is actually the first year I will not be playing a courtier or a pirate. Somehow I've always, for the last couple of years, I've always ended up in one or both of those roles. This year I'll be playing Brother Dementus, the Mad Monk. He's got
Brother
multiple personality
Dementus.
disorder.
Exciting.
Is that like an offshoot of Dr. Demento, kind of?
You gotta come to the Renaissance Fair and find out, my friend.
Pitches.
I am also, this year, I have taken the reins over for the men's group, Rascals and Rogues. We are a 5-piece singing group, and this year I'm in charge. So it's a little harrowing, a little nerve-wracking, but a whole lot of fun. Got some really talented guys with us this year, and we're looking forward to bringing a lot of great music to a lot of happy families and all of our friends and such. So
Cool,
it's gonna be
exciting.
a really cool year this year.
I'm excited to hear more about it. And so the reason I wanted to bring that up is because talking about this side of your career, your acting and your musicianship, this leads into the album you chose for us this week, right?
It's very true. Actually, we're going to be adding a song this year to the Rascals and Rogues repertoire from the album we're talking about today. It's Carbon Leaf, Ghost Dragon Attacks Castle. Really great album.
That's an awesome name.
It really. Can you imagine a ghost dragon attacking a castle?
It could be used in so many different genres. I mean, I could see a death metal in this field. I could see this definitely could be pulled off as an indie or folk, possibly even an old classic rock like Floydian or ELO, something like that.
Yeah, but that would have to have like a hand-drawn cover of like a ghost dragon attack.
No, that would
Actually,
be the
if
death
it was
metal.
if it was death metal, it would have the hand-drawn cover by the same guy that does every single death metal album.
It
cover.
could have been.
I
Honestly,
kind of want
it
to see a
could have been
5-year-old's
Styx.
drawing of a ghost dragon attacking a castle now, though.
That would be
it
probably
could've
more
been
preferable
Styx.
to that guy that does every single death
Yeah.
metal album cover.
But it would be like a metallic robot ghost dragon if it was Styx.
How could it be metallic and robot and
No,
a
it would be a
ghost?
see-through dragon, but with
Well,
like
2 out of 3
with
aren't
like a Tron
Too
background.
difficult.
This is getting really complicated.
So this album. So you chose this band because one of their songs is going to be a song you're doing with your band at the Ren Fair.
Yep, Rascals and Rogues is going to be picking up the second track on the album, the Donnybrook Affair. We're actually this Wednesday at rehearsal. We get to try it out for the first time. It's going to be fun. Yeah, it's this album I really just enjoy a lot. I'm a huge fan of Celtic rock, Celtic music, traditional Irish. That entire folk genre has always been close to my heart. especially since I get to sing it at Renaissance fairs and stuff like that. But even before that, I was always really big on the on that entire the ethnic music kind of thing. Calling back to my personal ancestry.
Well, I find that it's a very... Just Celtic music in general tends to be a very flexible genre. Well, actually, I should say adaptable genre. And maybe not so flexible necessarily because it retains its identity over the course of these centuries. And I don't believe, up till now, we've done any Celtic music proper, have we?
No.
I mean, well,
As a review.
We've mentioned a lot of bands and albums over the years now.
We've not
never reviewed
We've not
one.
reviewed a straight up album. The Wasties, who have been guests on the podcast, play in that genre, but we have not reviewed an album as such.
But I think you're not wrong at all about it's a very flexible kind of music because this is actually this is the common music of the people. It's probably one of the first European basic forms of popular music.
Right.
You have your upper class who's always doing not the jigs, those waltzes and dances and those the saltarello, the gagliarda, all these great long, very classical music. Is very nose up.
Even back to medieval times, yes, it would always require that nose up and sort of dancing perfectly upright and all these posture changes.
Music was always something that of the learned class.
Yeah.
And as music started to become more easily accessible, more common men found easy ways of creating music and sharing it from the very prehistoric times.
Yeah.
When they were able to start mass producing, or not even mass producing, when people were able to make their own instruments.
When they were started producing, not mass producing, just
producing.
When they
producing.
started producing.
When it was the
Yeah.
violin trickled its way down to the middle class and lower class.
Well, even when the lute was first invented in medieval times and a guy could go around just singing songs, he was always considered the lowest of the low, but he was entertaining to the higher-ups and therefore was okay. When you start debasing that kind of music is where you start getting into the what became Celtic folk music, because this is the music that that lute player, after he's done playing for the king and queen, would come into the pub with his satchel of cash and be like, all right, I need to get drunk and have some fun.
Yeah.
And
It's also
that's where
between, I
drinking
think, the
songs
whole
come from.
speaking
church and secular thing is also, I think, very important. The second
Yeah.
we move toward secular music, then you start getting your troubadour-esque songs about love and love lost and all that stuff, which lends really, really easily to these kinds of tunes.
What I found really interesting is that as the Renaissance comes on, the gap between these two starts to close, and you start to get a lot more of these themes running coherently, together.
Concurrently.
Concurrently, that's the
Hey,
word I was
there you
looking
go.
for.
See, I would have just made something up and gone with it. That's what you
That's
do.
your MO.
Well, no, that's what we do here.
Oh, no,
No,
that's
that's
what you do
here. Don't you lump me in that box.
No, me neither.
Anyway,
Someone just got called out.
We're speaking of. You just spoke of. Let's get drunk at the local pub, and first track is "Bloody Good Bar Fight Song."
I'm so glad you picked up on my segue.
There you go.
This song, I like a good title to a track before we even get into a track, and this one is it's a very face value title. This is what this song is about. Here it is.
Except
And it
it's
is.
not just about that.
Right.
It has a deeper meaning to it.
Yes.
This is the first thing that I'm noticing. There's imagery.
And
I'm not used to imagery in my Irish anything.
Then you're not paying attention.
Well, no, it's lyrics tend to be plain, as in their meaning is what they're saying, as opposed to the meaning is what they're alluding to.
If you're talking
Are you simply
about
saying that
straight-
most Irish music you take as literal?
Yes.
If you're talking
Most
about
popular
straight up
Irish
drinking
rock.
songs, yeah, most of the time it is. When you're talking about more the more diverse forms of Irish music,
Yes.
your jigs, your reels, and when you get to the sadder songs, there's a lot of imagery. I find. What's her name? Lorena McKenna is a perfect example. Things like The Lady of Shalott. That song is so lovely, so beautiful, and I mean, it's a excuse me.
It's okay.
Hey, editing. It's a poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson that was she put to music. And that so there's definitely the ability of Celtic music to carry imagery very easily and very well.
And also, I'll swing it back the other way. I think that this track could go toward the literal side as well. I mean,
Yeah.
not all. I mean, imagery comes and goes here. I mean, it depends on how far you want to go with the line. Until you bruise your way into my life. yeah, you can take other things along with
Well,
that.
the-
But
the
you do
next-
have to go back to the title. It is called Bloody Good Bar Fight Song, so just keep it literal.
The next line is, "You're like one good bloody good bar fight song." That's a simile. It's a part of the English language which is actually being imagery.
Steve is currently rolling his eyes at John.
I don't usually get to be professor.
I think,
But you're overstating it. This is, I mean, first of all, you sound like George Lucas right now. That's the way he defended his prequels on that exact same logic.
wow.
Hence the eye roll. Point is, I think it's just a matter of none of you are taking this too deep and literally, because
No.
later on in this album we do get it's something that I would apply the word imagery to. But if imagery is just your way of saying this is what happened and this is a semi-colorful way of saying it, this is still pretty on the nose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has the imagery aspects, especially with lines like "tribute to all the kings falling down on their pride." You know, that's just it paints a pretty picture for me.
But it's not. We
It's
drink and
personal
drink and
things.
drink and drink and drink and drink and fight.
And
We
fight,
drink and drink and drink and drink and drink and drink and fight. And if I see a pretty girl, we'll sleep with her tonight.
We will?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, I'm a little more inclusive.
You sort that out later.
I had to, sorry.
There was a nice aspect I did enjoy right off the bat, and that was the tempo of the verses, which each verse had a
It
kind
sort
of
of
like
goes-
a 4-4-4-4, and then blends the second pair of lines together in such a way which you're left with just like two hanging beats.
It's really
at the
just
end.
playing around with the downbeat and upbeat. You have the downbeat, which is always on the one, and then it's sort of the upbeat is chosen on the second half of the two. So you really get this more on the 1 and 2 and. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So that's really where your emphasis are, and that's almost in every single measure. It's an interesting quality. It's
It
not
adds a
something I haven't
fluidity,
heard before,
but
personally.
it adds a fluidity that we haven't not gotten very recently in a lot of the music we listen to.
Well, we were just talking about how imagery and poetry work together, and I think it's when you think about some songs as poetry, you can understand where that comes in. This is actually it's stanchion, much like you would use in writing a sonnet. Shakespeare used stanchion, iambs and trochees and things like that in his heroic couplets, all these things to put together to create a poem. And the artistry was not only finding the proper words, but finding the proper words that sound the proper way, that have, an accent on the right part, on the right syllable coming in, all these things, working them all together. It's not just as simple as rhyming lines. It's every word has to be carefully placed.
It's very colorful, and yet in this particular instance, it's being used to paint the picture of a bar fight.
Exactly.
So, yeah, there's lots of really interesting ways you can do it, and I do definitely hear how that sort of pick-me-up can... It's kind of like a stumble. If you picture a stumble, which of course is a lot going on, I imagine, during a bar fight, then, and also the fact that he kind of stumbles his way through this song, and you can hear a lot of other things. I think the imagery, just to backtrack a little bit, is not so much in lyrics for me, but the music itself.
It's absolutely
the imagery.
music.
For instance, you hear a crowd, and that crowd is provided by the fiddle itself.
Well,
the fiddle in the background has a constant tremolo throughout this entire track. It's very, very rapid. And I interpret it as a crowd.
Well, that's what I had noticed. The fervor of the fiddle work was what gave this kind of raucous feel to the song. It really kept you moving and moved the song. It added this pace and this urgency to this kind of chaos.
We had also talked about how a lot of the lyrics pick up on that stumble.
Yeah.
A lot of the lyrics are actually crafted so that the sound of the lyric hits the sound of the beat, and it keeps that idea rolling.
Yeah.
There's also a moment later in the song where the instruments go back and forth with a kind of mimicry following the same notes.
The very floaty solo.
So as if the crowd was swaying along or the crowd was bobbing along in the fluidity of this chaos.
The interplay between the penny flute and the fiddle.
Yeah.
The back and forth, and they were adhering to the melody, adhering to the beat, but because of how light of a touch they were really giving the melody, it kind of created a separate piece around the drum work and the bass work and the... Ooh, was that a guitar in there?
Yes, there was guitar in the song.
Funny. I there's really a lot more to it than just the the tremolo and the violin and everything. The imagery is painted also by just the penny whistle itself. I see as more of a character than anything else. I see it as if that was sort of the female present and the object of desire which induced said bar fight. You could paint any number of stories you want to this, because I do find these lyrics to be somewhat general, and of course it really is just hammering home the fact that it is a bar fight song. You feel the steins just swaying in the background, that kind of thing.
Or being used over someone's head.
Exactly. And which brings me to another use of rhythm. The drums in this song in particular were I think, at their best throughout the album, in my personal opinion. The drums carried this along.
I will contend that later songs...
Yeah, there are a couple songs later on where I like the drums more, but I will agree that the drums are definitely at a high point here.
Maybe it has something to do with the fact that, of course, this has such a pick-me-up. It has such character to it that, I'm more inclined to notice something more like that. There's other songs later here where, to be frank, it reduces itself to a more standard Irish jig, in which case the drum work is fairly limited. It can't go too off the wall, because otherwise you ruin that 2/4 structure or that 4/4 structure that a round or reel might entail.
Right.
Well, I find that true of most music. You can't be too powerful with the drum, but in a lot of Irish folk music, the bodhran is usually pounded and gives a really hard driving line. It's not so present, I think, in this song, because you've got such great other aspects mixing themselves together. It's a very balanced sound in this one.
Well, hard driving line is one thing, and that's just it. I think this had more intricate drums to me.
Yeah.
In which case, hard driving line is something that definitely does appear later on, and it's just a different aspect to note. But the drummer here was...
Historically, that would have been used for the large spaces that they're playing in, for the common folk, to actually have them keep the beat while dancing. Without the use of actual equipment, electronically powered, to propel their song across whatever expanse they're using, you need something that reverberates. And here, it's a little more updated than what you'd expect, but it does still have that same original type of feel to it. It doesn't divert from that.
Yeah. In any case, props to Jason Neal, the drummer for Carbon Leaf, on that one.
Yes, we should have individual call-outs more often, shouldn't we?
We should, but none of us do any research, and so
That's
we don't.
not true. I do research.
We do a lot of research.
We do lots of
not
research.
with
Very
band
poor memories.
Well, we don't do a lot of research when it comes to band members, often.
I'm going to call myself out. I got my smartphone out.
Wow.
I've got the Wikipedia
He sold
page
himself
open.
out pretty quick.
Yeah, and just about every major sports announcer on major radio has the same exact thing.
No, that's even worse. They've got a person. They've got a separate guy.
They got
who has a
person,
computer,
they have
and
research
they do
right
it.
there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, people think they're like
actually,
full of these facts. They just, it's stored in the
It's
mental
actually
hard
common
drive.
in podcasts also to have a other person on a computer, so you go, oh, what's that thing? Hey, so-and-so, what's that thing? Okay, great. So the thing is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, but we
Like
have
our
to
little
pay that
self-justification
person.
there. We just turned that around to saying, hey, actually, we're pretty good.
I have enough other talents. I don't have to.
Can we
emphasize
ride
my
this
brain.
unrelated segue into the next song?
No, we have to talk about the outro of this song.
Okay.
This song
You have
actually, I really enjoyed the way. Well, first of all, it leads directly into the next song.
Oh, yes.
Number one.
The
Number
only
two.
it's the only proper transition on this album.
But I thought the transition was
There's
great.
that use of proper again. I don't know that.
Yeah, you're right.
I
That's a
would,
John word I'm taking.
Yeah, I don't know that I would
never
use
use
that.
a John
It's
word.
the
You're right.
only smooth, uninterrupted transition on the album. This is where track one, track two goes from one to the other without any pause, any delay. It just goes from one song smoothly on a note into another.
And that's
I
what's
took
great.
liberties to use that word only because it really is a transition. When
Right.
you think of a transition, you think of it as a continuous piece.
Yeah.
Transition is not so much the empty space that exists between most tracks on an album,
Yeah.
which, there's no exception generally.
But used in this transition is that really strong driving drum beat.
Yeah.
It almost
Yes.
once the transition is made, it almost completely drops out or fades down, and all you have is that drum and the lyrics coming in, and it's just
It
that's
was
my
pretty
favorite part.
good.
It's
It was
like,
pretty damn good.
It's like, who knows who we can give props to that? Could be the sound engineer right there. We don't know, but that kind of stuff I really really like those little intricacies.
It does give a great highlight to the harmonies, though, because you just get the drum beat and those the all of them singing together in that introduction to the track.
You know what I really loved? We were just talking about the imagery of of a big bar fight and how the whistle and fiddle are playing
Right.
up against each other, and you almost see everyone smashing each other over the faces and like beating each other up. And all of a sudden this transition happens and everything drops, and it's like someone just stood up and started singing this, and the bar fight stops, and everyone starts paying attention to this one guy going, a row, a ruction, a fracas, and a fray. That's
Which is weird because now they're describing what's going on there.
Yeah,
from track 1.
Exactly.
And this is
interesting.
as we used the word earlier. Steve brought it up, or I think maybe Joe, someone did. It's a reel. This song style got me into Irish rock.
Yep.
I remember one of the first true Irish bands I ever heard was Dropkick with.
I don't know if I'd call them true Irish. They're Boston.
The ones that are labeled.
I just came
Irish.
from Boston today. And considering this was my soundtrack,
Flogging Molly true Irish first because they're at least from Ireland.
From Ireland.
Yeah, you know where the Irish come from.
Considering this album was my soundtrack leaving Boston, I thought it was very appropriate. But then I said the same thing. It's Boston. So there you are.
Well, no, they're labeled Irish rock.
Yes,
They've always been. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But then again,
The way it was introduced to Irish rock was Rocky Road to Dublin. That song, that specific song.
Now, I wonder if you heard the actual traditional arrangement, if you'd recognize the song.
Yeah,
I have heard the original, and yes, it took a while,
Exactly my point.
but I did.
well, just while we're on this little segue here, not a segue at all. This little diatribe. John has frequently pointed this out whenever we come across any. Well, granted, we haven't actually reviewed Irish music proper, but it's come up in conversation quite a bit. And Dropkick Murphys does seem to have a lot of effect here in America as far as popularizing Irish music.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hear a lot of it discussed before Dropkick Murphys came around.
Yes.
Now, I'm kind of more in line with Joe Rude at this particular moment to say that they're not true Irish, or they, of course, were
more
taking
rock.
many liberties.
They're more
Irish
rock than
influenced punk
Irish.
rock.
Yes.
yes, they are Irish influenced punk rock.
But isn't there something to be said about that kind of popularization? Do
Oh,
people
yeah,
now have that?
absolutely.
Do they have that to expect now from Irish as opposed to going back to the roots, or are they inspired to go back to the roots as a result?
No, I think Dropkick Murphys has made a great career of changing, of using Irish music to change the view of punk music. And they've done a fantastic job of it. Some of their arrangements are very traditional, like Fields of Athenry is one of my favorites, and that's very it follows the traditional arrangement, but the way that they pound it out is very
Punk.
very well, yes, but it fits very well because punk rock and Irish music, they kind of come from the same ideas.
I was just about to say the same
Yeah.
thing, or at least they have the same principle, I think, in mind, that you get up there and sort of say whatever you need to say, and sort of say it in a somewhat simple fashion.
Yeah.
Break it down in the same way that you described.
It's the
music
common people
around
having fun,
There you are.
finding their reason to unite, mourning loss, all those things.
Yeah. All right. I think that is a good segue into Donnybrook Fair.
Donnybrook, yeah, well, because this is one of those we're gonna get together and we're gonna go have some fun, stand up against the man. The council's trying to shut down this great party that they've been having for a long time. Gee, we don't know anything about that in America, do we? I'm sure everyone has got one of those things as, back when I was a kid, we used to go to the fair every time, and now the fair's not there anymore. It's not the same anymore. That's what this song is talking to, and it's kind of great.
Yeah, and I mean, this is where you really get a sense of what the fiddle and penny whistle can do. The dichotomy between the two of them and how they play off each other is really heightened on this track.
I love that it is a very traditional reel, as you said.
And you get a sense of that almost immediately, and it really does add a depth to this song that really makes it entertaining and enjoyable.
It's heightened, and yet I want to also bring attention to the relative simplicity of the rhythm, and that's across all of these tracks. So then, when you really consider this kind of music, this is why it's so lyrically driven, is because you have a steady rhythm, or at least steady enough that you can dance to it and bob your head along to it, and then you kind of focus or shift focus to lyrics a bit. And this was one of the most powerful tracks on the album in the lyrical sense, because of how they play around with words in general. The alliteration on this is just over the top, so much so that it's a joke in itself. You can hear him just writing this down and having fun with every little word. A row, a ruction, a fracas, and a fray. It's tailor-made. It's tailor-made to this kind of rhythm.
I think that's true of a lot of Celtic music. There's a very tongue-in-cheek humor, even when they're talking about serious stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we can have fun. We can still have fun and find the humor and lightness in these things, which in its progeny, country music was not able to find. Doesn't use that so much. Irish music very much keeps that alive.
Yeah.
And this is another great example. Like it could be something serious, but he's having so much fun just spewing out these words like that.
And yet,
To me, that's half the challenge. To be honest, I think that's
also
what people
half the fun.
mostly go to this for.
Actually, for me, the best part of this song was the breaks in the lyrics. The actual, I can't really call them solos. They weren't really treated like a solo, but it's the musical interludes were really the best part for me, because it took that basic drum work, that basic percussion, the rhythm that was being built, and had fun with it. Especially the second break, you get a kind of an expose of each of the instruments without being, long-winded and masturbatory. So it doesn't break up what the reel is doing itself. But it's very enjoyable, and it's got a lot of character, and you can feel each of those different instruments has a different sort of character of what's being brought to this ruckus.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
I'm not denying it's a factor. There's something about the lyrics here which just they draw you in to.
Oh,
it's
they're
really just the words themselves, almost more than what's going on.
They're pure fun. That's I'm not going to deny that, but for me, the best part of the song was surprisingly the music.
Very interesting.
I can't wait to be singing this with Rascals and Rogues this year.
It sounds like it'll be a lot of fun, especially... How many guys are in Rascals and Rogues?
There's 5 of us.
And do all of you sing?
Yep.
Yeah, see, I can see that being a lot of fun with this.
This is just going to be a blast to sing.
This is the sort of song that everybody's going to have a beer in their hand as they chant along with.
Well,
We certainly hope so.
Well, I also like the idea of, like, you could do this, the I guess it's the verse, where what you were just quoting, the,
a row,
ruction.
like, I could see them doing that in a round, too, which would be kind of fun, too.
That would be
a couple of
interesting.
different ways to sing
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
actually. But I will not reveal it to any of you. You'll just have to come to the fair.
Which is in Tuxedo, New
All
York. You
those
should go.
Pitches again.
Where's Tuxedo, New York? It's in Orange County. It's not that far, people in New York. Don't freak out. Really.
It's about an hour away from the
You
city.
have
And there is
Google.
a bus that goes from Port Authority right up to the fairgrounds.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Convenient.
You can get your tickets and your bus tickets all at once. There's information online. You could check that out at nyrenfair.com.
There you go.
Well, I'm shooting back to one more thing with these lyrics here.
Okay.
And that's the fact that you almost can detect that he's actually forcing words in there just for the sake of this little experiment.
Yeah.
Because this is probably the fastest he sings in the entire album. And right after that whole, a row, a ruction, a fracas, and a fray, a rough and tumble free-for-all, a broil, a brawl, a mail. Like, it is rapid.
Yeah.
Really, really rapid.
It's one of those things that...
And when he says that, those three specifically, a broil, a brawl, a melee, you can barely even catch it because he's just cramming it in there just to fit that little pentameter or whatever it is. But he needed to fit it, and so he did.
Yeah, well, that's also fairly
He
common
had
in
too
a lot
much
of
and
Irish
he made it
music.
fit, is what you're saying.
That's right.
Well, and that's actually quite common for these kind of lyrics.
Well, it blends it over into comedy music to me a little bit, which means I almost kind of want to rate it for that.
Not comedy, brevity.
Excuse me? That's the opposite of brevity.
No. It's very much. It's not a joke though. Yes, you got a smile on your face, but he's just getting it all out. It's I don't see the comedy in it.
I don't know, but this is what I'm trying to say about this style in general. It's been around for hundreds of years now. Granted, it has these minor changes, and yes, it is adaptable, as I was saying before. But then, at a certain point now, I think modern culture seems to view this as some sort of novelty, this kind of music, because when it appears, it has that effect. It has that, like, oh, I'm back in Ireland, I'm Dublin. It's a little silly at that point, too.
I sometimes forget that because of how often I end up listening to it because I enjoy it so much. It's like, the common man nowadays doesn't actually hear this all that often, and when they do, it's like, oh yeah.
That's right. That's why I brought up the whole dropkick thing, because it sort of put people into that phase, which they could very easily be drawn out of if it was not an expansive genre of its own. So that leads me to my point here, which is to say that this is kind of a bit of satire, in my opinion.
I would say satire more than straight up comedy.
But there's just too much honesty in the style.
Oh, I know, and that's why I think that this itself is the style. This style now itself is a form of satire.
That's
If
a
that
little
makes-
sad.
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I think you guys are thinking too hard on this. I think you guys are putting too much brain into this. It's just fun.
It is fun.
Yeah,
I think it's just fun.
I think I agree with our guest. Yeah, I mean that's the heart of it. Is I don't think fun always equals funny. I think you're finding some of the style a bit humorous, but in all honesty, the song's just a fun, fast-paced song that's supposed to keep you entertained and engaged, and that's exactly what you're saying the lyrics did.
That's kind of it. It's a roundabout way. I mean, maybe satire seems a little bit heavy and a little bit thick, but that's when you consider this track compared to some of these other tracks that come later on, which I do think has that honesty to it, then yeah, that's what this is meant to embody. It's just like we all know what a fun Irish jig does, and guess what? We're going to drive that home really, really far. Hence the satire in itself. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Speaking of heavy and thick, and no, this time I'm not making euphemism.
For once. We're moving on
Segues today
to
are
track
riding
3,
hard.
the title track of the album, Ghost Dragon Attacks Castle. So this is our first instrumental track on the record. Mm-hmm. And what I really like about this instrumental track is the scope of it, as well as the fact that it really showcases all of the instrumentation of this band. They give you a little of everything in this track, and so you can really kind of understand what all of the musicians are capable of with their particular instruments that they play.
And sometimes multiple instruments that they play.
Yeah.
I mean,
This-
5 guys, there's a whole bunch of instruments in the song.
Yeah.
This is that masturbatory part, but I was digging it. If this is not going in the, I realize this is going in a weird direction. I was digging the masturbatory part of this song, the actual introduction and expansion of each instrument and what they do, and not just what they do, but how they do it with each other. How they actually do that interplay.
I would disagree with the word masturbatory, because I think this is definitely a big thing of... this is a jam song. This is a song that you get together with a bunch of guys who know their instruments, and you just, you start laying down a beat, and you jam on it. I think this is where each person is bringing out their personal artistry and craft. I don't even call it so much masturbatory as quite talented.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Joe on this. This is not so much. This is not the caliber of a masturbatory solo. That's usually that gets used because of what masturbatory means. One, either meaning solo, when you have one person that goes on for like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, the same.
This is
Freebird.
many people crammed within a short span of time, and actually, they have a lot of taste here.
Mm-hmm.
They're segments of the same melody often. And then they just trade off the next phrase of that melody to the very next person. And yet, that entire melody could not exist without them all together. That itself, that's the antithesis of masturbatory. That's knowing when to sort of give your liege to the next person.
It's a beautiful collaboration of all of the musicianship in this band. It really showcases the talent of each instrument.
Yeah, there's a Carter... I'm going to say his name now. Wrong. Carter Gravatt, I think, or Gravitt. He plays the bouzouki. I think there's a bouzouki in this one. I might be wrong. It sounded like a bouzouki, which is a very, very strange instrument. I'm not even sure I can really describe it. But there's also, I think there's a hurdy-gurdy in here somewhere, and possibly even the mandolin. Trying to pick out which one, but he plays all 3 of them. Right. So it's like this one guy's flipping between instruments in one track. If you ever hear this one played in concert, can you imagine that?
Yeah, just jumping from instrument to instrument.
Something they can definitely hide in the studio version here.
Right. But still a whole lot of fun.
And I do have to wonder how this particular line of melody was composed. I mean, it seems so fluid that it's hard for me to even envision this being done in separate tracks as it probably would be done in the studio. But it's too fluid. That one phrase is just about to end, and there's no possible way I think you could have that pick-me-up from the next instrument without it being a single line. And to be honest, in most of these cases, they're comfortable as a group. They're comfortable when they play as a group, and sometimes it does lose cohesion when you trade off tracks. Mm-hmm. That's one of the biggest problems, I think, with making this kind of music studio.
And there was one instance where they really did purposely kind of lose that cohesion. They kind of just completely flamed out all at once, about halfway through the song, and started a complete rebuild of the entire melody, like ground up, where they just basically did a full reintroduction of each individual instrument. That really was the only way I could describe it is powerful. It was amazing to hear so many different pieces, because it was almost as if like the penny flute would create a statement, and then it goes into the background, and something else recreates that same statement. And
That's
that goes
exactly
in the
the part
background.
that I'm talking about.
That was a very special
But
thing,
it's not
because
only-
that was hard to do.
Absolutely, but it wasn't. What's interesting. It wasn't just the introducing each different instrument, but also using instruments in different ways. We were talking about how they use the bass, how you usually hear a bass line being plucked out one note at a time, and somewhere in this in the later part of the song, we actually hear a brief bass solo where it sounds like he's strumming a main line and then a harmony line on the same instrument.
Yeah.
And it sounds amazing. You don't ever get bass emphasis like that.
Tantamount to a full chord, and yet it still has that softness of a bass and everything. Also, the fact that it doesn't fit this genre to our minds or to the public's
what is
mind.
expected.
Yeah, and this bass comes in so sparingly here, and when it comes in, it's just something about it. It's a bit of contrast, I think, to be honest, for this type of music. It really could sometimes use that low end because it tends to be so loud and so fast and so high all the time.
I think that's why they
screechy.
favor bald runs a lot, because it not only provides a percussion but also a bit of a deep resonance.
Yeah. Yeah. All that. Yeah. This so far was this was a really, really strong instrumental as a first track, and we do get instrumentals later on here, but you know, it's really hard to avoid. I think actually I would apply your logic before. This is just fun to me. At first I started up, I was like, oh yeah, scratching my chin. Yeah, this is an instrumental, you know. Yes, it's very fast, 6/8. I'm just like, well, that's all it's gonna be, and then it's just it's a spectacle of trading off.
And I think the important part is that it also keeps the general tempo of the album moving from track 2 into track 4.
Right.
Track 4, she's gone, parentheses, for good this time. Which, right there's this almost comedic aspect coming out just in the title.
Oh yeah, you want to
As
talk
if
about
you have
tongue-in-cheek.
the whole backstory is implied somehow, just within the like. Oh yeah, all of you people hanging out, you know, watching my gig. Well, you probably know some of you probably know me. You know my backstory. You know the person. All that stuff is kind of implied here.
Well, yeah, when you have a title like "She's Gone for Good This Time," for good this time means she's been back before, she's gone before.
As
All
if
of
to sort
that
of
has happened.
swap your hand and say, "Wow, you know the story. Let's
Yeah.
get into the most recent detail."
And
Yeah.
don't we all have a story kind of like that somewhere in our histories?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm sure that.
No, I'm going back through my history. Oh yeah, I got one.
Some of us
I'm
have
not
more
going to
than
talk
one.
about that. Anyway, I mean, it's this song is so upbeat.
Jaunty.
Really, yes. Yeah, it is.
It's a jaunty tune.
It's miserable though.
Well, yeah, I mean, but this is something that's very common in a lot of the Irish music that I've listened to, is they take something terrible but put a positive spin on it because it's better to look on the brighter side. And that's definitely the case here. It's a form of acceptance and looking on the bright side of life.
I wouldn't even say that. It's not even the putting a positive spin. It's okay. Just even lyrically, it's not even positively spun. It's just they say unhappy things with a smile.
But I'm saying the music is positively spun. Like, it's positive music.
It's very Irish, is what it is.
Which is energized, yes.
We were talking that's that general Irish spin on the facets of humanity, the facets of life itself, because when you deal with so many potato famines in a row, you kind of have to act that way. Otherwise, you know, you'll just fall off with the rest.
Your house is burned down. Here's a Guinness.
Exactly. That's their basically their mantra, I think.
That's a horrible, accurate generalization.
We've just
Yes.
lost all the Irish
Yes, it is.
listeners.
Yes, it is.
But I really, it's got that little bit of the call and response nature to it as well, which is just something that always gets a crowd going in this kind of a situation. I love it's sort of like, oh no, you're talking to your best friend. Yeah, no, I think she's gone for good this time. No? Yeah. Why? And now you got to try to explain it.
Yeah, that's strange that they actually have the whole conversation there, the most general possible conversation, in the chorus itself.
I don't think... I mean, I guess it's a little odd, but I think it's actually quite appropriate.
It adds camaraderie to the whole idea of going on here, because now you can kind of put yourself in the same
Well, it's
shoes.
commiserating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's a perfect word for it.
You're welcome.
And it's hard not to smile at the stuff this guy's going through in this sort of a situation, which is why this is a very endearing track for me.
No, you're right. My favorite part of this, though, is that interplay, I think, from person to person, because that's the kind of thing, again, that would fit the atmosphere that is generally throughout this album, which is that you're at a bar and you do have a Guinness, so tell your woes over beer.
Or whiskey.
Why not make that a conversation as opposed to some kind of self-soliloquy?
Mm-hmm.
That's not, I think, what's appropriate at this particular time in the album. It seems that all of these really upbeat tracks are kind of thrust in the very front here. Because we do get a little bit of a lag later on, but I don't know, I was in a little bit of a personal debate about that. Not necessarily that I wanted a track like this in a more negative tone, perhaps, or a sadder tone, but that I wanted some other variety in the tonal changes or something like that. Because, it's Irish music. You're pretty much just going to be getting a jig the entire album. I do like a little bit of a different spin, though. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
I get that, but I don't think that this was the place to have it. I think the next song was the place to have it, and we get that. We get a bit of a tonal shift.
So you like all the tongue-in-cheek just brushed right up front?
I mean,
it was a little
there wasn't
cliche.
any tongue-in-cheek in the third track.
No.
There was
There was no tongue-in-cheek in the third track. So there's only tongue-in-cheek in the first two tracks. Then we get a little bit of breathing room with a nice instrumental.
But the instrumental still has somewhat of the same tempo, the same kind
It's
of feel.
got the same level of energy and style of that energy.
I guess. But then it's less about tongue-in-cheek and more about the energy.
I think, actually, you're right. That's really what I'm trying to say here. I think the energy was my only problem. I think the energy needed a little bit of a breather at this moment.
Yeah, I think the breather came at track 5 in a perfect place.
No,
I think that 4 tracks of this was okay, and then we got a breather. For 2 songs, actually.
Maybe it has to do with the key in that case. I don't know.
I guess. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just don't know that I agree, because we get a breather for 5 and 6, and they're both much more serious, even sort of more modernish takes on Irish music.
Yeah, I agree with that. Number 5, it's just... basically, we go from talking about serious things with a kind of a laugh and a smile to dropping the pretense altogether, and we go straight into what's really going on.
Well, I'll get to that in just one second, but I do want to explain there is some other reasons within She's Gone that support my feelings on this, and that tends to do with the interludes, because up until now the interludes have been really, 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 really strong. In fact, they tend to be the most eyebrow-raising parts of those earlier tracks. And then here I start to notice just some similarities to the previous interludes, where it's sort of the same style of kind of trade instrument, as opposed to perhaps the original style that we got in the full-on instrumental, that kind of thing.
I would definitely stand by that statement. I was feeling a little familiarity with what was going on with the instruments that...
I can understand that. I mean...
that was... It was making me kind of take a little bit of a step back that way, because I was getting a little cliche, to be honest. Like, I was expecting certain instruments to come in when they did and to do the things they do.
But that's also a very typical of Irish music, is that it gives you what you're expecting.
Yes.
Barry Privet on Penny Whistle coming in when he did, and actually I think that this is my favorite song that he plays Penny Whistle on. Barry Privet's also the lead singer, so I imagine it's kind of difficult to switch from singing
That was
to...
one of the gripes we had,
Yeah. If only you could play Penny Whistle while singing is a personal trial I will always have.
It was that third repetition of... it was after the second break, and that third repetition of the bridge-chorus combination, where we were like, that would have been a perfect part to just keep playing Penny Whistle.
Right.
But we can't, because the guy's talking now. He only has one mouth to make noise with.
But
Well,
you can
I'm sure
cheat.
you could multi-track
That's the thing.
in studio.
In studio, you
But-
can cheat.
But in
I
concert,
think
no.
That's the whole thing. This song is obviously... This whole album really has an obvious slant towards a live performance as well.
Well, Irish music is meant to be performed live.
Exactly.
So come to the New York Rennaissance Fair and hear some Irish music performed live.
The pitches don't stop.
No, that
So you thought, but now you'll be thankful that I only pitch at the end, because I don't do that.
A little bit. Just a little bit.
There you go.
It's because it's funny.
But yeah, we do get a less
Annotations
lighter,
on you.
more serious, sustained serious feel in the next track. Track 5, Oi, O-I. For me, the first thing... What? You can spell oi different ways.
This is
true.
the Irish oi,
As
to be
opposed to
differentiated
the Jewish
from the
oi.
Jewish oi.
That's what I thought you were being so specific about. You know, being Jewish, maybe you felt you had to distinguish yourself. I don't know.
Why's it got to be racist?
Well, it's with a completely
Why's
different
that gotta
alphabet.
be
You gotta
accurate?
remember that part too.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this song has... I was discussing with Joe pre-recording that had a float kind of feel. The album and song Float by Flogging Molly is the more modern and more kind of easy rock kind of emotional track that they've done. That album was a lot more mature than previous works, and this song takes a much more modern and mature feel instantly in the beginning in the beginning of this track.
Of course, you know that mature feel that you're getting out of this is basically just the fact that they went to a minor key.
Yes.
Essentially.
That's
And
a
it's the
music trick that I'm
contrast, though.
aware of.
It's a
Yeah.
contrast, though. But I mean, it's not just the fact that it was in minor, it's the fact that everything up until now has been major, and
Yeah.
has been so steadily major, or only pivoting just between ones and fours, and then back again. And then here, it's that suddenness that is what really, really gets you. It is very, very impactful, and I didn't expect it. I really, really didn't. And in some sense, that was kind of what I did want earlier on this album. But the only thing that didn't change in this track, which I maybe had wanted earlier as well, was the tempo itself as well. It's the only thing. But
All right. I mean,
continue
sorry.
along.
for me,
Continue along.
the track that what really sold me is, I mean, I had been touting the fiddle work up until this point, but the in this song especially, it takes a more fluid, free flow, beautiful feel than the franticness of the other tracks.
It's much
It does.
more emotional. It doesn't really follow the cadence and the stanchion that we've been kind of playing with to get that kind of tongue-in-cheek feel. Now we're kind of letting emotions out, and it's just beautiful. One thing I really love about Carbon Leaf is that they have this ability to take Irish music to a more mature and a more modern place here, as Flogging Molly did with Float. And it's something that shows that Irish music is not a dead and stagnant genre. It's actually very dynamic, and it's still growing even today, 4 centuries, 5 centuries, 10 centuries after its creation.
It is, and this track proved that, to be honest. I mean, granted, I may have just only had that little thing about the tempo, but frankly, the melody here is one of is the most impressive part, by far. Very drawn out. It sort of gets caught in itself and kind of feels like it could go on forever. And my initial reaction to that was that I didn't know whether it would be positive or negative. But on one hand, it's expansive, and it's the first time I could really say that a change or lack of change, I think, was unforeseen for me. While on the other hand, there was a slight little bit of ramble to it, but then I sort of thought about that considering the nature of this track, and it was almost as if it was a question waiting for an answer, which I think is a creative choice considering these lyrics.
And the words. Words.
Oh, those words. These words.
Okay. Now, I threw out the word imagery really early, but this is easily some of the most powerful lyrics I've read in this year of reviews that we're going to be doing. It's a whole new level. Bound in chains with 1,000 rains, no wonder the storm still adores you. Hold me down or hold me now, screaming, I still love and adore you.
It's poetic.
It's
very
not
poetic.
just, it is pure poetry set to music.
But here's the great part: is how they play with these words.
I just some of the actual uses of the metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
Nightingale, ashen pale, whistling tunes. Yeah, the moon still adores you.
The just speaking to what Joe's talking about the emphasis on words or using them to a certain end. I remember specifically what really cuts through me like a knife is that emphasis on adore you, where he goes really, really high and comes back down. Because in general, the melody is, and I use the word stagnant in this case in the most positive way possible, because he stays in a certain field, a certain range, and he doesn't really shift out of it until he reaches that one note, and then he raises up and he comes right back down. It's a sensation of longing, I think.
And here's the best part: is that he, in the first verse, he's created this wonderful rhyme scheme by using that adoria, and then he breaks everything. He breaks the rhyme scheme. He breaks it all. He says another word for that would be lonely. He's cramming too many words in. He breaks the rhyme scheme altogether, and you almost feel your heart breaking on it.
Well, there is one instance where my heart does break during this song.
What song?
And it is, flow down now to frost the ground like cool hallelujahs. And
Now
when he
that's
says
imagery.
the
I'm going
word-
to just point
Cool.
that
When he
out.
says the
Hallelujahs.
word hallelujahs, that is spine tingling, that is tear jerking, that is everything I want in a voice.
And this song does speak to something close to my personal life that does, even today, listening to it with you guys, still jerk the tears forth from my eyes. That's the power of these words.
Every single utterance in here is just, I love every aspect of this song.
this is by far one of the most emotional tracks, arguably the most, with the exception of possibly one other track on the record, but it's definitely up there as far as emotion goes, and you get this longing, sadness, this
It's stoic pain.
yeah.
It's something I think everyone has
that's
felt
it.
sometime in the the trials and journeys that we go through. Everyone's felt a heartbreak like this,
Yeah.
where it's like, how do you get that closure? How do you mend that broken heart? And it's like it says, pick the lock, sweep the floor, allow the empty space to heal.
Yeah, that's
But it's delivered with such simple solidity behind it that the breaks in his vocal work and the breaks in the melody as he's using it to pair up to this vocal work, just showing those cracks are just so much more expansive because of that.
It's not all it had either. I mean, the comping from the violin standpoint, I think also kind of tied this together, tied the story together
Sure, of
in
course.
tone at least. And then on top of that, the harmonies really served to give it those highs and lows because they're very tasteful. They come in only at the peaks of these, or only at the peaks of these phrases particularly,
Or else
And,
hauntingly behind it, which is just
yeah.
so good.
yeah, it sort of it phases in and out in
Yeah.
a way. It's not even that it stays to the end of the phrase. It just it comes in, it comes out, and leaves before you even know it was there.
And their harmonies had been strong up until this point, but I think this is where they really flex their muscles. They really show what they can do harmonically as singers.
Yeah.
Which, is something that we don't see as much as I'd like. We always tout the harmonies of Steam Powered Giraffe and a few others, but we don't get as many succinct and beautiful harmonies as we're getting it here, which is a nice change of pace.
Right.
Right, but
after that
harmonies
word,
don't have to be fluid throughout an entire track. Often, they think they're best used in peaks and valleys.
As
Yeah.
punctuation.
Right.
Carbon
And,
Leaf is one of those bands that has a vast toolbox and knows when to pull out which piece.
Another thing, and granted this speaks to what I was saying in the very beginning here, I may have initially had issues with this track when I first started because of the intro and because of how it sort of went to a tempo that I was kind of familiar with. But normally when I have that pitfall, it's hard to draw me back from because it says that a song is about to sort of enter the same trope. The song pulled me back. It
Yeah.
really, really did.
And what was beautiful about this song is the emotion was very much, it was driven musically, but it was mostly driven by the lyrics. The next song, track 6, A Song for the Sea, I felt was more driven emotionally by the music, especially considering the style in which it's played and the style in which the lyrics are sung as well, to a point, give you that Song of the Sea's kind of feel. The song, of course, is called A Song for the Sea. And it reminded me actually of a song that's much more modern, but that pulled from songs like this, I'm sure, which is a song Downeaster Alexa by Billy Joel, which is a fisherman's song, a very grinding fisherman's song, and that's what the kind of emotion this song gives way to, this kind of working fisherman kind of sound of the seas.
Another level of stoicism that I saw in the previous track, but this one has a kind of a camaraderie feel because of the way it's presented,
Yes.
which definitely lends to the theme that they're developing here. I found it to be a good middle ground between the sad emotional end of Oi and what we had known previously. It was, for once, we tout on this on track placement, I found this to be a great follow-up.
Yeah.
Not as powerful, but definitely not something that's drawing me out of what Oi did.
Right, well, this is giving you this sense of what these fishermen are going through, what the sea can do, but still there's that camaraderie, this kind of, well, if we work together, is still ingrained in this song, which is what pulls you out of that dark place.
It's not an I and you like the previous song. This definitely is more of a where are they? Where are we? What's going on?
Yeah.
Them there. It's always plurals being used here. And
In it together kind of a thing.
That,
like,
plus the kind of almost shanty-ish kind of repetition of what's going on does
which
a lot
lends to the comparison I was making,
Yeah.
which both songs are very shanty-ish, and I think that's what I mean. Yes, okay, is it a little predictable that a song called "A Song for the Sea" is almost shanty-ish? Yeah, but I mean, I like the placement after "Oi," and I really like the ebb and flows that this track has. The lyrics are a little predictable for what you would expect of a song like this, but still, I like them. They were still poetic, if not, again, a little predictable.
I gotta call it, I was not a big fan of this track.
Really?
I don't know. Here in this sort of second act, I was seeing a little bit of slide, to be honest.
See, my issues came
because
after
in this particular case, I had the same reaction in the very, very beginning that I had back in Oi, and it kind of slipped back for me because it wasn't able to sort of save itself. I have this thing with introductions. If you state an introduction really, really strongly, I have very, very high expectations. In this particular case, the opening here you get this loose rhythm, a cello that's just detached, alone, singing a kind of soliloquy to itself. There's no rhythm, there's no drum to speak of. It's just playing around with intervals, not unlike what we got from the electric bass earlier on. Mm-hmm. It is the chordal instrument, all just there. And yet, I kind of liked, the breadth that this is providing. I feel Ireland, I feel landscape here, I feel emotions, and then the drums just kind of came rolling back in, like on cue, after your designated 4 bars and whatnot. At which point we're at relatively the same tempo that the rest of the album has been, approximately so. And from there on, it was just hard for me to sort of get into this because it lacked the in-depth emotion and then all the imagery that we got from the previous track. A shanty, I don't think was a good placement after Oi. I think I can't very well input and say what else they could have done, but to me it was a poor follow-up.
I'm going to still argue that
it's a safe choice, is what it is. Maybe that's not so poor, but it's safe.
I mean, I guess I can see some of the predictability in it. I saw that.
It's here we're going to show you a piece of our heart. And now we're just going to kind of put a filler.
But
see, but
no.
No. It's not a filler. I will fight that. Adamantly, it's not a filler. And I'll tell you why. Because
he is very animately fighting this.
Well, because what me and John stated earlier about how this song is about camaraderie and coming together, it's showing that you're not alone. I think that's a good follow-up to a song being so isolated and being about someone feeling so isolated. It being fillers, I can't agree at all. I feel like there's enough levels here, lyrically, emotionally, and just scene setting as this kind of we're on a boat together in the thick of it song that it's not filler. I mean, I agree with you being taken out of it.
Alright, but I'm going to raise you one. Just because, on one hand, yeah, I could definitely see that. When you're talking about filler, I was only talking about just the fact that it's, your courtesy sea shanty song. But if you're making the claim that it's not just a courtesy, then let's go a little bit further with that. In which case, I want the emotion out of truly feeling alone. And wouldn't you think that would be better achieved by what he painted in the introduction, as opposed to a just kind of plain sea shanty song? I mean, my main issue, as I get into the little details here, are the choruses. The choruses in this particular track were just a little bit listless to me. It seemed that it didn't justify the tempo in a way. Sort of sail, sail, sail everywhere. He sings it in a way that almost he doesn't sound quite into it. Granted, maybe that promotes you in a way that he's longing, he feels alone, so he's just kind of moaning it and groaning it, but I don't know, there's something about the resonance of his voice where I don't quite feel loneliness, as I feel kind of a twang of bore.
Well,
that actually would speak to fishing.
Or to just being bored at sea, but still that
There's
smacks
nothing.
right back to your standard sea shanty.
But at the same time, this one speaks about going out into the sea, but it does take a darker turn. It talks about those sailors that don't make it back.
For me,
the danger and death that's actually out there.
For me, what I was getting a lot of, and this comes straight out of that strong drum beat behind everything in this one, I see a captain standing on the deck staring out at the thunderheads ahead, and like everything he's about to have to sail through. He's like, there's a grim recognition of this is my life and this is my job, and come hell or high water, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, it's that same sort of idea.
I want to feel all these things. I really do. It's just that the music was not quite reaching that for me. It wasn't reaching those heights, or at least the resonance of his voice wasn't reaching those heights.
And I also take issue with you calling that chorus a chorus. I don't really think there's a chorus verse set up here. It's more of a...
that's undoubtedly the chorus.
That's
That specifically is undoubtedly the chorus.
We can also agree that
Sailor
not every
beware,
song is
sailor
going to affect
beware.
every person the same way. That's one of the wonderful diversities of music. So it's not going to strike us all the same way.
I mean,
well, that's true, but I still claim that this is no argument about it. This is a chorus.
No, yeah, there's a chorus. John doesn't know what he's talking about. It's fine. He's wrong.
I think they differentiate. They play with the structure of verse, chorus, and all that. But
because the verses came off a little bit more of a chorus to me as well.
Yeah,
I think it's just the extent of that chorus, which of course you can repeat once or you can repeat it several times.
I think ultimately the discussion here is that we didn't connect with the song the same way. And if you're saying that you feel it's filler and the fact that it's a expected sea shanty, then I can kind of see where you're coming from. But I just feel that it was still a proper follow-up to 5, and I think that comes to a personal preference more than anything else.
I'll just stick with it. It was a bit of hype for me, because even when the interlude comes a little bit later, it starts to broach the same elusiveness, I think, that the beginning held, but it just doesn't quite live up. It was a little bit too fleeting, and then it jumps right back into the same rhythm, and it's just... I don't know. I'm a little zoned out to that at the moment.
I think the difference is you were so honed in on that intro that you had expectations that weren't met. Whereas the rest of us didn't really have that hone in that you had. We accepted the intro as what it was and what it was moving into. I think you were looking for more in a song that wasn't ever trying to deliver more. You found something that wasn't there.
Now, to be fair, though, I do think this is one of the weaker tracks on the album. I do agree. It doesn't fulfill everything I want it, but I do also appreciate being very... it's what I expect from a shanty.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
I still say
a longing shanty.
When I say safe choice, this group does not do anything Irish poorly.
No.
So,
no.
My only real problem with this song is the ending.
Yeah.
It just...
it dragged.
Yeah.
It did drag to me.
But see, it's not that it just dragged. It kind of... I like the way it was dragging because I felt where it was going. The way that it just dropped itself on such a hard... And it sounded like it was going to go somewhere, and then it was not just a stop on the chord you're at. It almost created this unresolved dissonance to end on, which I was not a fan of.
Yeah.
That's personal preference.
I mean, honestly, I would say, and I can see where you're saying that.
I just am curious because I don't recall that specific dissonance, but when I hear it in principle, just the way you're describing to me, it almost seems like artistic justification for what you're describing. In which case, that could be a positive, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess. I mean, for me though, the only way that this song could be one of my least favorite is if the next song didn't exist. Because the next couple of songs is where the low point really hits for me personally. And the next
depends
track,
on where you see your second and third act on this album.
Yeah.
Because Joe, you noted acts here, and I'm curious just as where you would divide these.
Well, I didn't so much note acts as I noticed that we get halfway through the album and your third act area. This is the third act where the third act problem, but I actually place it.
I am going to preface this just by saying that the fact that there are 3 instrumentals, I don't think is any accident.
No, definitely not.
Probably not. But the third act problem is based off of Shakespearean setups where you have 5 acts. The third act is the middle of the play, and it's where nothing happens and kind of everything just drags and dies. And I think that
people arguing in the thick of it.
Yeah, it's not really a strong third act problem, but there's definitely a bit of a third act problem, and I place it in A Song of the Sea. About halfway through, it just it starts to lose me. And actually, I really like February Details, spelled very strangely.
It's February.
February.
No,
February.
Come on, guys, it's the Irish. February Details. February.
That was particularly poignant.
Oh, there go my Lucky Charms.
Where are your words today?
He doesn't know what words. He never has words.
So no, I really like this song though because this is a throwback to traditional Irish jigs to me. Maybe not jigs, but this is traditionally Irish to me.
All right,
I love
see that.
And I do see that, but I mean, we get something a little later that I felt was better and traditional, whereas this was just kind of, I don't know, it just left me lacking.
Here's my disclaimer, just as to what I was saying earlier on, and it applies here definitely. I accept some repetition in this music as it does serve to maintain the party atmosphere and instrumentals or where that's at. But I think this track, especially compared to what we had earlier in the first instrumental, did hit the light FM class of Irish folk. The first one, we had personality. We had all the instrumentalists showing themselves off, introducing themselves, because it was the first instrumental. This time, it's kind of a little bit of a rehash. It goes back to tradition, and yes, Joe, that it does succeed. Again, I reiterate, they don't do anything Irish poorly, but it's a little bit of a background noise
And
by
also,
comparison.
I will say
Agree.
that the distinction, it's there. It feels a little more lighthearted, a little more airy than Ghost. But it doesn't feel like it does anything different or expands upon Ghost itself. It's a hard one to describe.
There's good comping at times, there's some good rhythmic flourishes, but it was, I don't know, fairly pointless.
Well,
I
that
won't say-
actually perfectly typifies the third act problem.
No,
There you go.
it does. It really does. I feel like I don't know.
Cool, you might get some nice Shakespearean dialogue there. You know, it's just like enraptured with his language, and it's like, wait, what? Did anything happen?
I
Are we
feel
progressing?
I feel like for this song, well, I don't disagree that we've established they don't do this music poorly. It's not bad, but I just felt for me there was not enough detail or intricacy in this song, and there was so much detail and intricacy in Ghost Dragon Attacks Castle.
It was the
And
same.
I
Continue.
think it was, similar intricacies, but because it was almost a restatement, it lost me a little bit. I was like, all right, I'm ready for the next thing.
But using a different part of theater, you can use it as like another interlude between parts of a play. It's not even the actual act itself. It's the part where you're just playing music while everybody mills around, maybe gets another drink and gets ready for the next scene that's coming up. It's being used as a breather between sections,
Right,
because if you look between the instrumentals, there's a lot of heavy theme work and what's being created in between the instrumentals. Mm-hmm. The actual story is being broken up by these parts.
Well, that's why I posed the question, perhaps a little rhetorically, to you, Joe, because I do sort of see these as the dividers in a way. Kind of in the way you'd expect, even during a Shakespeare act play, they would actually have, of course you never hear about this now, but that's very hard to do now because we don't know what happened then, but you would have music come in between these acts, just to give people a little bit of time to walk around, because it's a long time to ask people to sit through a play.
Or stand, as the Groundlings were doing.
Exactly. So, the content of this album is obviously surrounding this, and clearly is not this, but they might as well give you some enjoyment in the meantime. It's a form of intermission, so I'm not going to be so harsh on it. It basically is the same 6/8 framework with the same phrase, that same phrase that runs within 1/6/8 measure, repeating itself over and over and over by different instruments in only marginally varying ways.
Well, I think now is a good time to actually mention the fact that, bringing that fact up, is that Carbon Leaf, this is actually the first really strongly Celtic-influenced album that Carbon Leaf has released. Typically, they're typified by as an indie folk rock band, and they've been around since 1992, I believe. Yeah, 1992, and it's so they've had a long career now. Their music, when it first started, and when they started their own label, Constant Ivy Records, and then drifted off of that as an indie label onto a major label. Why do you keep changing your hats? It's driving me nuts. I'm trying to have a serious conversation, and you keep distracting me.
Yeah, sure. Blame John. It's John's fault.
It's your fault.
They're on a new label,
They're on a new label, Vanguard Records. Vanguard Records pushed them through, I believe it picked them up in the late 90s and brought them into the new millennium. And then they, just a year or two ago now, they broke with their label, citing the fact that Vanguard Music was very strong on CD sales, and who buys CDs anymore? I mean, I still do. I like
do also, actually.
I like CDs, but that's because I'm an old fart. But yeah, they were finding that their music was getting stagnant. And listening to their other albums, I do like a lot of their Carbon Leaf songs. But it's true. I can see where there might be a level of stagnance to their music at one point. So they quit their label and started they went back to Constant Ivy, their own label, and have been producing music digitally again. Which is, of course, a lot better way to get music out there. And this is helping them grow, I think, as a band. This album in particular, they took a very strong Celtic focus. They reduced a lot of their heavy pop, or not so much pop, but popular music influences, and upped the folk ideology to produce this album. So the fact that we are seeing a very traditional song being produced is new for Carbon Leaf. And I think this might be them playing around with this idea of what makes Celtic music. What can we do with it? How can we be the same? How can we be different?
I was starting to consider the same thing, especially as we drew on to the second, third act here, and we seemed to move away from what I personally saw as a advancement, or at least an individualistic quality to this kind of music. Because of course I don't know Carbon Leaf's previous work, but then again I do know a lot of other Irish bands or Irish Celtic bands, Celtic folk, that kind of thing, and I hear something unique here. And I do tend to be a little bit judgmental in this department, because it is tough to separate yourself from something that is so commonly recognized as just what I earlier described as the novelty. You know, I get there Saturday night at the Way Station kind of thing. It could potentially be that. But every band, such as we introduced the Wasties, they introduce their own little spin. I like to see something individual in that department. Or, as I said earlier, even though it could be going a little far at times, the satire, that sort of thing. I don't think, now as we draw into the second, third act, that it really is that far, because it seems to be, what you're saying is what typifies the genre, what typifies Irish. Let's see how Carbon Leaf does this. And they can't always be pushing their previous pop influence down your throat. At some point, they have to start exploring little quirks about the genre, such as the sea shanty, such as the lamenting song, the breakup song, all these various aspects, which they actually are pretty broad at.
But
they cover a lot of ground.
There's also something else that they are exploring here that is just not in real mainstream music as a whole, and that's the fact that this is a rock opera. This is a concept album. This is
a little far from me.
This is a story, a pure, straight up story through and through.
I think it's much.
I was considering.
More
no, I was
segmented.
definitely considering that. It does kind of. It's definitely themed. I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it a concept album and a story, but there's definitely a journey you go through with this album.
For me, this has a clear A to B to C to D in an actual setup of themes of songs, of lyrics.
I'm with Joe here. I see the journey, and the journey. We've had this discussion several times. This is the difference between a theme and an arc.
Yeah.
This has an arc.
Yeah.
Arc is important, and arc is something that every album should have, and this album is not lacking it.
If this
but
were
a theme is really, really strong, and that's just, there's not enough evidence here for that.
I think if they meant for this to be a concept album, the next track, The Fox and the Hare, would have come before Oi.
Yeah,
I think it's time to move on to that.
Do you want me to do it now, or do you want me to do it during my wrap-up? Because I have a reason for this placement.
Well, we need to discuss Fox and the Hare anyway, so
Well,
if you want to get that out now, or hold your peace.
Part 1, pre-Ghost Dragon, is going to the party. Part 2, tracks 4, 5, and 6, is the breakup and getting over the girl. Part 3, which is going to be tracks 8 and 9, is the new woman. Going on to the next big thing in your life. And for that, the Fox and the Hare works pretty damn well.
Yeah, but then the final part, I mean, it's back to you.
You
lose the second girl.
No. The final act is actually going to be a explanation of the reflection of the fact that you really can't have what you had before, and that regardless of what you try to fill the emptiness with, it's still there, and you still have to deal with it at the end of the day because of the inability to create now long-term relationships. And I can keep going unless someone wants to interrupt me.
I don't know.
But there's a lot there that I can't talk about.
I think you're forcing some of these themes there.
No.
Yeah.
I feel it's
structurally, I feel it's a little forced. But anyway, let's get into the Fox and
So
the
you're
Hare.
talking about wanting an inundation of satirical now?
Yeah. So this one's dripping with satire.
This one's just dripping with ridiculousness.
Yeah,
Let's just clue everyone into the lyrics. I will fight Nazis to keep you with me. I would fight zombies eating flesh on the streets. I would chase lions and tigers and bears. Run away from the fox, you young hare. Run away, you are too unprepared.
I'm gonna entertain, and only entertain for now until this sort of starts piecing together John's little theory here. And I do definitely say that this track, at least this track alone, is your kind of... It's sort of an odd way of saying you're in love. Very, very odd.
Well, because
but it is the I will do anything. It's the smitten stage, is what it is.
No,
This is a rogue in love.
No, this is someone trying to get the girl. He's not in love. No, this is in lust.
I disagree.
Well, we have no consent.
I disagree
so I
mostly-
can't jump on board.
Because this is not someone who is trying to get a girl. This is someone who has the girl.
Yeah, because it almost sounds overprotective in moments. Like
No, he's trying to keep her. He actually says you can leave any time you want to in the song. That's one of the lyrics is you know you can I forget what it is, but you know you can go anytime you want. So he's had her. This is I think a rogue and a scoundrel, a fox who has won a lady or is with a lady in some sense, and yeah, has strong feelings like, well, you could do whatever you want, but I'm in love with you, and you know what? I'm going to fight for you. All your other courtiers are going to come around, and you know what? You can choose them if you'd like, or I can fight them if you'd like. I'm going to win because I'm more prepared.
I don't take it that seriously. I don't think he's being that honest.
It's not
though.
that serious, but I think the lyrics speak for themselves.
Yeah, but it's when he starts talking about don't hate being beautiful because you do have other men circling around you, circling the ring is the actual phrase. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, but I'm cunning, crafty, resourceful, and smart. I mean, he's basically going, I'm going to steal you away from these other potentials.
It does refer to suitors here.
Yeah, it does.
That's strong.
And not only suitors, but also duels.
Yeah.
He's talking about trumping everyone else.
But I feel this is more of, he's speaking to the woman who's surrounded by the men,
but
getting him and putting himself in the position to get her.
But then here's the conflict in the entire song. The resolve of the chorus is run away from the fox, the singer being the fox, you young hare, the hare being the lady. He's saying, you need to go away, you need to run away from me, you're not ready for this, but you're here.
But I think that's more of being coy with her to make himself seem dangerous.
Which is why I call this a rogue in love.
Exactly. He's talking himself up and making himself seem so dangerous and so dark and debonair.
Well, maybe
and all
not
that
even
stuff.
talking himself up, but just being honest. It's like, look,
I'm a scary guy.
I'm a bit of a jerk. You like me, I like you, it's cool. I'm a bit of a jerk, I'm just saying. I actually know someone who's very much like, yeah, I could be really awful at times, but you know what? It's cool. I hope he's listening right now, and I hope he knows exactly that I'm talking about him right now.
Gotta love that.
It's always a possibility.
Isn't it?
I mean, let's hop off lyrics
as
first,
I mull over these lyrics, I do have to say it's this might be interpreted either way.
We're not hopping off the lyrics yet.
Apparently not. I mean,
We're gonna hop off. I
want to get into the music of it a little bit because the music of it, I mean, adds to that kind of satirical, playful nature. I mean, what really sells it is the banjo. It's this plucking sound, and it's almost, in the way it's played, though, does sound very mandolin-esque, but it's the sound of the resonating skin of the banjo that really adds a reverberation that really lets you know that it is actually a banjo being played.
Answers that question.
Yeah, it
I don't know the sounds of music.
and I like the music in this track. I just feel like by the end of it, because of the structure of the lyrics, the music gets a little repetitive. Not so unbearably so, but by the time the chorus comes around again at the end, you've pretty much heard the same. It doesn't expand upon what the first chorus had been.
No, I'm with you there.
It does get a little tired and repetitive, and also because the chorus gets kind of tired and repetitive because it's just so silly and standoutish that you can't not notice the lyrics. So when it gets repeated many times, repeated a few times at least, you notice.
Musically, I think I would be most impressed in this track by what could be called the bridge, I suppose. It was actually a chance for a little bit of a change up in tone. With that all-male, slightly darkened choir, when everything goes, "Boys, run away and you will despair. Run away, boys, you are way unprepared." But it's right at that moment. See, on the verge of getting a little bit darker in this fairly, again, upbeat track, "Run away, boys," that's spoken. Really on a bit of a darker chord here, and with the all-male choir behind it, it has some power in sort of taking a breather. And then the chord pivots back so safely, just mid-verse, "You are way unprepared," right after that. And that chord change right there was, again, one of those moments where I see these fleeting return moments, like, we gotta pull back, can't go too far, can't stray too far from the
it stayed
verse.
a little safe towards the end, and I think that's where the song really lost me.
Yeah, and then it's also what you said. It's a little bit needlessly long. It's a lot of repetition. It's almost. I kind of got the gist of this already.
Yeah.
Run away, run away. I get it. Not that that's frowned upon, obviously, in a live setting, but I do make some distinctions here. This is an album setting. I think that's really what it comes down to. Is I do rate albums for studio releases. Otherwise, I would be at a live show. So, I don't know.
No, yeah, I'm
It
not
is
going to
separated
give
there.
something specific leeway because it's designed for their live show. I mean, the reality is it's still an album. This isn't a live record. It's a studio album. And I mean,
I think there's something to be said for either side of that.
I guess. I mean, but also, like, this track, as much as I feel like this one could be designed for a live setting, I feel like the next track is really the live setting
Oh yeah.
track.
Anything they lost in that last track, they definitely redeem in track 9, "Victory."
It's "I Love Victory!" ! Because it's important. Which is a more rock and roll sounding song. This is where they drop a lot of the Celtic. It's still there in hints, but it goes more along the more modern flogging Molly.
It's in the rhythm
drop
more.
kicks. Yeah, it definitely is more strummy guitar work kind
It's
of
more
song.
of a swing style.
Yeah.
A swing southern rock.
Rockabilly,
actually.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's about rockabilly, but
But I mean, it's noticeable because you haven't really had a strumming guitar line until this point. Most of the guitar work had been a little more intricate, or had been some other string
Supportive.
instruments or supportive. Whereas this, it takes it takes a rhythm kind of strummy roll.
yeah.
But the victory, the victory, the lyrics in I Love Victory are also kind of on the same vein as Fox and the Hare, as far as fairly straightforward and simplistic. And there's no secret to what this song's about. It's an anthem-y, go-get-em, pump-up song about almost a conceited view of how one loves victory and is going for the gold, kind of an idea.
This is why I almost wanted to sort of entertain John's concept here that this was the victory.
This is the
for
conquest.
This was the consummation. But there is nothing. These lyrics are the
Lyrically,
most general.
yeah,
this is just
nothing.
victory.
Well, no, I feel like
At
instead
a
of
core.
actually winning the girl, he actually just ends up in a bar fight anyway and beats him.
We're too off.
Yeah, man.
Too far now.
You're not holding much water here.
Yeah, you're treading at this point. Yeah, and I mean, are there any lyrics worth mentioning? Because I remember the gist, but
I think
Well,
the next song has all the lyrics that are worth mentioning.
The gist is really
This-
what these lyrics are, is the gist. I mean, it's victory, the whole entire core. Pass the cup around, I love victory. Lift it to the clouds, I love victory. Fears on the ground, I love victory. We're never looking down, I love victory. I mean, it's every positive
Rah rah sis boom ba song.
It's rah rah incarnate.
It's almost a little bit. It's almost a little bit
rah.
satirical and comical because it's so much. I love victory. It's almost like making fun of "We Are the Champions."
Well,
Yeah, actually, I can kind of see that.
That's what I
same-
keep getting every time I listen to it.
It's actually very much in the same vein of "We Are a Crowd" from Lonely Island, where it's just a very pump up. We are a crowd. We're singing. We're loud. Hey hey rah rah song, which was very satirical, and I think it's very similar in that vein. Like I said, it reminds me of the old Looney Tunes, fricka fracka firecracker, sis boom ba, Bugs Bunny, rah rah rah.
That's not Looney Tunes
Yes,
originally.
it was. Well, no, but that version that I sang
This
was.
is like one of those Istanbul, not Constantinople things. You're drawing it from something it's not from.
Oh dear lord!
No, those lyrics are exactly from a Bugs Bunny cartoon. I have it
No,
on
but
VHS.
it wasn't originally from
No,
there.
of course not. But I'm just saying that's what it
What, you
reminds
mean
me
they
of.
didn't invent that?
No, they didn't invent that.
Looney Tunes stole from other things? What?
Yeah.
What?
Next thing you're going to tell me is that the things that happen in Looney Tunes didn't really happen in the real world.
Wow, he's taking over incredulous voice. I'm impressed.
One thing I would like to point out:
It's usually my
rabbit
thing.
season and duck season are not mutually exclusive.
So the next track is...
So yeah,
I've
Acme was a supermarket, though.
yeah, but they didn't actually have everything. They were not.
and
the
they didn't
Sears
sell
catalog.
rockets.
I don't know. They went out of business before I could check. Point is, there is actually I have something to support you here, Joe. Earlier on this, not just granted, I was one who first proposed this whole satire thing, but granted, I think it's a lot more simplistic than just that. It's really just it's making fun of the concept of the victory song, of the what we had earlier, the sea shanty, that kind of thing. It's all of these individual facets of the culture. If you see that as part of the culture, I don't know. The culture of victory, what is that? I don't know. But it's the kind of things that you would otherwise celebrate, or you would otherwise sing and gather round on. And one thing I noticed in this track, which does not occur too much in this album in general, is the fact that he actually stops singing at a certain moment, and he starts speaking. It's that speech-like singing that I think John we encountered back in, I think it was Arc Iris or something like that, that Sprechgesang, singing or singing as if to speak, or speaking as if to sing.
Which
Speaking
is
of
the
cadence.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, and
Okay.
that is something that is.
I was wondering, where you
The,
going with this? I
the
don't
cadence it was an old operatic term,
Yeah.
but applying to this for lack of a better term, it's basically just reducing it and talking really matter of factly, but it comes right out of the verse itself. All of a sudden he's singing, and then in that same exact phrase, it just sort of teeters off at the end. I believe at the moment here that it occurred was, "You take me down, I'll learn from that. Return the favor and pick up your hat." And in this particular case, it really was said just like that.
Yeah.
Like, we don't often sing in the podcast. We never sing in the podcast, but
Well,
yes,
I
it was
sing in the
actually
I sing
spoken.
quite often, but it's never good. And that was.
It was an
the
interesting
whole,
moment,
The whole thing
actually.
was that was great. The actual infusion of the rock and roll was great. For me, I couldn't get over the simplicity of the lyrics themselves.
Which is why I think it is satire.
Yeah.
Because it is so simple. Like that's pretty much my justification.
I think
It
you're
was-
attributing a lot of satire where there isn't any.
I think this one. Actually, no. I think this is the only place where they actually full on was like satire. Up yours.
That
I'm inclined to agree. I mean, to be honest, I think in those cases it tends to work, because
Yeah.
in those cases then you can kind of forget about victory. Well, I don't think there's much meaning to this track. No, you can actually just pull back then and not be a cold-hearted curmudgeon and say this is fun. Which I did have fun during this track. Granted, there's not too many strong ones here for me in the end part of this album, but this was a nice pick-me-up.
A lot
Especially the bagpipe solo, which I have other
Right.
things to say on in a minute.
which I wish they kept playing. It was another one of those
The bagpipes.
penny flute, bagpipe,
Penny whistle, penny whistle.
Excuse me, penny whistle, bagpipe, and the main singer is all the same
Yeah,
individual.
it's all very,
Oh, that's
again.
sad. The bagpipes. Oh, keep going. It would have been perfect if they kept going with it.
All right, fine. Since we're talking about it now, I'll say it now. I
They should have
guess.
kept going with it.
But my experience with this bagpipe was when it happened, I had two reactions. I both didn't expect it and also really expected it at the same time, because it's also another form of satire. When in this album did you think you weren't going to get a bagpipe appear at some point? You've had every
Actually-
other instrument of the genre. Why not
I
bagpipe?
find that stereotypical and racist.
Well,
It's
that's how I feel, good sir.
Wait, aren't bagpipes Scottish? Not Irish?
Celtic is
yeah,
Scottish,
no, I
the
know.
Scottish culture is also Celtic.
I know.
They crossed the Isle of Man. Okay, it's not very far.
I think that the bagpipes. Yeah, I agree with Steve that there was just this kind of moment of bagpipes. Oh yeah, bagpipes.
Exactly.
That exact moment. It was.
Way to go, Barry Privet.
It's literally both bagpipes. Oh, bagpipes.
but
He's kind of accepted. Good grace.
that's the whole thing. You can just accept it because yes, it is something new, but it's okay because it's supposed to be there. Maybe it
Well, I'm
should
gonna
be
sort
on
of-
this album.
Remember that one of the things that a lot of people love about Irish and Celtic music is that it's rife with jokes, innuendo, things like this. And for me, all the other songs were fun. This is the first one. This and The Fox and the Hare are the only ones like, pa-da!
Yeah.
You know?
And if you actually really think about it, that's kind of the musical interpretation of the same type of joke and innuendo. It's just
Exactly.
like that thing that you didn't expect would come out of a song, well, we just did it. They have a way of connecting with the audience as they do on the live setting, so, yeah, that does cross over to the
I
album.
really want to see these guys live.
That would be, I think, a lot of fun for a
Yeah.
live show. Lots of dancing and craziness.
Carbon Leaf, come to New York, please.
Speaking of dancing, we have track 10.
Amran
Okay, I
Damsa.
need to tell this story.
Okay.
Tell it.
So we're looking at this. It's like, how do we even pronounce
So
it?
the title is clearly Gaelic.
Yes.
And Gaelic is
Or Irish.
difficult. Gaelic or Irish, but it clearly doesn't look simple to pronounce, so we're looking for a translation. While looking for translation, we're listening to the song.
It's like, we're talking about how, it's great, blah, 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 fun to dance to.
It feels like
it's
a Maypole
jam
dance song, yeah.
Exactly. And as he says that, I pull up the translate, and it says, Amran Damsa, dance song.
More satire. There's no way it's an accident that they chose the Irish or Celtic or Gaelic for dance song as dance song and made a dance song.
I don't think it's satire. I think they just figured, that's what it is. That's not satire.
That is
That's
satire.
No,
Satire.
that's just
I
in
agree.
this case,
I agree
it's
with
just
John. This is
pure
another.
honesty.
This is fun.
This is
Done.
pure honesty.
What are we gonna name it?
Have fun.
Let's have fun. Done. I agree.
Okay, then in that case, I imply that whenever an artist who otherwise has very serious things to say, all of a sudden decides to pull from that and make something just so, then there is inherent satire within that fun.
Well, I think there's inherent satire in the Irish culture.
Yes.
So
maybe. But in this case,
But
I
then
don't
that's
feel.
all right. Well, now you get meta because in that case, that's satire within a culture that is embodied or defined by satire. Is that what you're claiming?
Well,
have you been to Ireland?
No, but I hear things.
Well, you should.
People come back with the greatest of stories.
Exactly my point.
Let's bring it back to the
you
music.
gotta remember, this in and of itself, nothing here except for Oi is just serious. Because that's not really how the music
All right, Rob. I
is.
take your point in that regard. Nothing is so.
So don't say, it's a serious artist coming back and doing something like this. But it's not a serious artist. This is obviously isn't. This is an artist with a love for life that the whole band just loves life a little bit too much. That's why they make this music.
No such thing.
Yeah,
You can never love life too much.
Amen.
All right, that's fair enough. No. Well, the only track that I think is very serious is Oi.
And that's that moment of candor that just gets a little bit too scary.
To this point, yes. I think later on we still have a few more tracks to discuss. But Amran Damsa is great as I think, like you said, Maypole Dance. This is another one of those jam tracks, and I just adore it.
But it's more intricate than the last jam track, and
Yes.
it's much more festive. It's obviously danceable.
And it doesn't do the
I could easily see the song
expose.
played at the Ren Fair while people danced around to it.
And
easily.
it's not just a statement of the different instruments or anything like that. This is more about the cohesion of the individuals as opposed to an exposition of the individuals.
I think the individual does get a longer span of time in this track before trading off to the next person. And it sort of does have a drive to it because of those constant cues, but yet not overlapped cues. Then again, when you factor that in with the two other instrumentals, I would personally put this second. It's
Yes.
definitely more intricate than the previous, but so far nothing is quite as out there as the first.
as Ghost Dragon.
As Ghost
Well,
Dragon.
here's the thing. For me, in Ghost Dragon Attacks Castle, I kind of got the idea of
featured solos. This one, they have such a wonderful blend and community feel to this song that when a piece is featured, when an instrument is featured, it almost organically grows out and then fades right back in very naturally, and I love that.
That's what I was getting at. That's exactly what I was getting at.
I had personally interpreted something almost to that exact opposite. That's what I got out of Ghost Dragon, whereas here I felt it was more like a cue. It was more like, not so much that you are done, now I will take over, but I felt a little bit more of a lack of cohesion. Not that I wasn't engrossed when an instrument was playing, but I don't know. Cohesion was the only little problem I had with this, in which case Ghost Dragon just takes the cake.
Yeah, but cohesion was out the window for me because this song's purpose is to be fun and entertaining. Everything else was kind of out the window, and it doesn't make your complaints any less valid. I'm just saying, for me, I got swept up in the festive nature of this track, and so I was able to ignore it. Yeah, pretty much. It's the same logic I used for a few Daft Punk songs when we talked about that album way back. It's the idea that it's become more about the fun and the dancing than the quality. That doesn't forgive quality notes here and there. It just means I didn't really care that much.
And of those quality notes, I have the minorest of critiques, but it's important to me. And I really think the flute track could have used a little bit more space in its recording.
The flute?
Wow, that is a
penny
minor
whistle
complaint.
Yes.
So minor, we're going to move on.
Penny whistle could have used more verb.
It's my instrument, man. You better start respecting it.
More verb.
It is a woodwind, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm asking. I would like
close there.
I had to think about that one for a minute. I haven't thought about the actual instrument families in
ever
15 years.
I tried to periodically remind them of it throughout this.
Which one does the drum belong in?
Yes, it is.
All right.
So Sad and Alone.
Track 11. So this song... So my biggest problem with the tail end of the record is that they're hitting cliches, but in unique ways. That dancing song that we got, the dance song, because I'm not calling it by the other name because I can't pronounce it, was a dance song. It was very predictable, but very entertaining. This Sad and Alone, also, face value exactly what it sounds like. It's a sad song about being sad and alone. It's a very swooning, sad song that kind of, it's that reflective, swaying kind of flowing song. While drunk, yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing. The previous track is the heavy drinking. This is the aftermath of it. It is repetitive and circling and slurry and disjointed like the tail end of a bender.
But that's also part of its character and joy because...
those are positives. Yeah. Those are actually positives.
That's what makes it something you can sing along to, you know?
Well, and also...
Isn't that what makes it not something you can sing along to?
When you're smashed out of your mind, the repetitiveness is all that matters.
But it's the circling, ambling nature of it that makes it a little bit hard to follow in that state.
But that's the actual story of the song. The choruses...
The lyrics are very easy to follow, I feel. And also,
they have very clear beginnings and endings.
And if there's anything I know about Irish drinking songs, it's that they are very repetitive because the idea is to sing along. Well, if you have the same chorus over and over and over and over and over again, and you remember it.
And then you just have the one person standing up doing a verse, and then the next person stands up, does a verse. And that's how these songs get to be like 30 verses, 40 verses.
This is exactly that. This is a deconstructed, sad drinking song.
And besides the fact that it really does have a little bit too much repetition, maybe, of the phrase sad and alone specifically, it does have... It still has that kind of angry wit.
Yes.
That you would associate it with.
Agreed.
Especially with 1, 2, 3 beers, and I love the way this actual phrase starts with a real heavy cut off of all the instruments. Just the 1, 2, 3 beers, I'm through. 4, 5, don't need to drive. 6, 7, 11 is right around the corner. There's no need to cry. Just the mental process that's going through here is very well done. Of the, I could use another 6-pack.
But what's honestly one of the things that strikes me most about this song? Is there's a sentimentality to it that, sometimes you do need to just be sad and alone. You don't want everyone to constantly fix all your problems. Sometimes you just need to be like, screw everything, get me a 6-pack, I'm downing them, I'm just going to sit here and be sad.
Yeah. Well,
and a few hours later, once you wake up with your hangover, that your head clears, and it's like, all right, I'm back onto my day.
Yeah, you can come out of it. Yeah, no, the idea that coping comes with understanding, reflection, and the ability to move on.
I would also argue immersion.
And immersion.
Yeah, we as a culture want to fix these problems very quickly.
You can't move past a sad situation without fully immersing yourself in it first. You cannot heal from feelings you deny. Period. That's fact.
And
if you don't accept the feelings, you will never learn and heal from them.
That's something the Irish
I once
understand
heard that
very well,
as a general observation of American culture, that very frequently we're criticized, or if not just noted, to be a culture where we're not free to be sad or allowed to be sad in public. You always have to put on this positive air.
Yeah.
Where this kind of thing would otherwise be frowned upon. The person sitting there alone getting drunk.
You can be positive and still be sad, but I understand what you're saying. This idea that...
It was something I actually read in a study of American culture, and also expatriates' experience when they're staying in America. Like just having come from their culture, where, like for instance, Russians experience this a lot, because for them it's almost the antithesis. They don't want to hear about anything positive, because then that would sort of be trying to overstate yourself, and then over here it's always project your most out there self, your most affluent self, your most social, your most pretty much just everything positive you have to say about yourself, and that's how you progress in society. I don't know. It was a study I read. It was actually very fascinating.
This one actually does give you that permission you need to be sad, especially when it takes that chorus, and that first chorus is kind of short by comparison, because in the second chorus it gets really rambly, and it's raise a glass high to me, myself, and I, and then it goes into one of my favorite parts. And drink yourself silly, a toast of self-pity. Sometimes you feel shitty, yeah, real itty-bitty. So just sing this here ditty, a song for yourself. Like, he forgot to rhyme that part. I love that he forgot to rhyme that part. It completely that train of thought, and then he starts repeating himself.
It gives the song character.
Yeah, it's very well thought out lyrically. Like, the phrasing, they knew what they were going for. This is the sort of song you have to kind of write drunk.
It's not accidentally.
Yeah,
and this is also something that is very I guess taunted in Irish culture, is the response to tragedy is have a beer.
Yeah.
Have a shot, and not like, let me make you feel better, but it's like, get it out.
Yeah.
You're sad. Be sad.
Yeah.
Be sad with this.
Here's a drink.
This will help your sad.
Things. Yeah, there's kind of a trope going around that Irish will, at your wake, just make fun of you and say how bad of a person you are, or something like that. But it's part of that grieving process.
That's how they show how much they love you.
Yes, exactly.
The night that Patty Murphy died.
It's being so mean or depressed or so sad that you really show that this person was able to make you feel so angry, so depressed, so sad that it was worth it.
Yep.
It's an interesting spin on the whole misery loves company thing, because this actually disproves that and says, no, misery loves beer.
Well, and company with which to share said misery, because that's
there's definitely
what this is.
definitely a sense of sharing, and like, you can be sad, and I'm going to sit next to you. I'm not going to try and make you feel better. I'll be the company you need. I'm just going to be sad about my thing, and you can be sad about your thing. And sometimes you don't want that company. Sometimes you want to be sad and alone.
So there is no company in this particular track. That's what I kind of like about it.
We now move on from Sad and Alone to another sad song. Our final track on the record, track 12, The Road is Breaking My Heart. This song is an anomaly on the record. It's the only track that's solo acoustic, just the singer. It's got a hollow demo kind of sound. It essentially sounds like an indie rock track from the mid-90s. Almost to a T.
See, what I think of this song, actually, I get this idea in my head that what was happening when Carbon Leaf was recording was they actually took this song, and it was meant to be the hidden track that Barry had recorded at the very end of the session. It's that song that you play for the bartender just at the end of the night, just before you're about to hit the road again. And I get the feeling like this was meant to be that 10-minute long last track. And, the song, your last track finishes, and then you got 10 minutes of space, and then this song comes on. That it's like, that's what I feel like this was supposed to be. But with this one, with Ghost Dragon Attacks Castle, the album, they wanted to include single versions of Donnybrook Affair and of Bloody Good Bar Fight Song, because those are two such amazing, rousing songs. And so I think there was just a matter of, well, I guess we'll just, cut each track, put them together, and this is the actual end of the album at Sad and Alone. The Road is Breaking My Heart is actually your hidden track, and those two singles come at the end to, because everyone's going to want them.
And I find this to be a great finale because in the story that's being built here for me, obviously, only me, this is 4:15, the bars are closed, you have to make your way home. That's why the power is gone. That's why it's a very singular in style, very lonely in style. That's why you don't get, a lot of complication. It's one man walking down the street. I mean, the imagery is there for that, just in the style it's being built. Just the fact that it is kind of a tinny background, back alley acoustic track.
Well, that's why
very underproduced.
Well, that's why I said Oi was possibly the most emotional track, because I feel like there's a lot of inherent emotion in this track just in its presentation alone. From the title to the quality to the lyrics, it's very much a sad, lonely song.
Let's face it, in another context, we might view this as one of the, we probably would be overstating this a little bit more, but in the context of this album, we have some little trouble connecting it, which is why I think for me, probably Oi is one of the most powerful, because in context of the album, it's more appropriate as the most appropriate track.
I actually disagree. I find this one perfectly situated in the album, and I think that it's the way that it's deconstructed down to just a acoustic guitar and has that tinny sound, that open space sound to the track, is what I love, because that's where you actually get the freedom to express vocally that raw emotion of, this is my life and I can't stand it, but I'll die before I show it my tears.
Yeah,
and it's like, that's not something you can get out with, in a small space with people crowded all around. You need that ability to just let your voice go into an open space and not have to worry about it.
Yeah,
It's like we said
more
in
on
the
board
beginning.
with Joe.
I mean, I think this really is the most powerful, is my claim. I'm only saying in album context, and I don't know, I don't see that connection that you do to the rest of the album personally. Because the rest of the album, remember, still is very varied.
Well, it's the theme that I see here. It's the story that I see here, where I see this as the after hours. As the song when everything else has ended in this album.
When you finally sobered up and now you can be sad without the beer to aid it.
Exactly. This is that part where the party is over. This is the aftermath.
This is the part where you're coping.
Or just trying to make it home. Forget about coping at this point. The whole idea of, I will let the road kill me before I show the emotions I'm feeling.
I mean, I'll be honest, it had the best melodies in the entire album.
And I agree with you that
he sung them with the most passion, I think.
Yes.
Than any other track in this album.
That's why I feel that powerfulness, because of the way the lead singer is conveying those emotions.
To be fair, I
through
had that problem a little bit earlier on in many other tracks, where I felt like his voice wasn't quite, the register was just not carrying over into fully believing every single verse. It sounded more like speech over singing, and yet here that wasn't present at all.
Right, because it was just him and a guitar.
Yeah.
And the only argument I would make to say why Oi is just a more gripping track for me is that it's that level of imagery I found in Oi that I just don't find here in the words themselves. Because all things being equal, if you're saying the music is being as good, or if the vocals are being as good, it's just, Oi's just got that level in the actual lyrics themselves that really sets it apart for me from The Road is Breaking My Heart. Yet, this is not by any means a kind of like simple or unimaginative song. It's just the personification here of him versus the world, which is kind of being developed. It does reach a sense of conclusion when he kind of realizes, well, there is a future here. In the last verse, it's, the road is breaking my heart, but isn't it breaking them all? The travel must be worth the trip before we sputter and stammer and fall. There is a conclusion towards the end of this track that does give you a little bit of hope, while Oi is pure downtrodden misery, and it's just so emotional because of that.
Well, we're talking a lot about comparing Oi and The Road is Breaking My Heart, and actually that's the thing I most disagree with. I don't think these two songs have any comparison between them besides being sad.
Yeah.
For me,
It's more,
although,
our
you know what
comparison
it
is
is?
just emotional impact.
they hit totally different things for me. The emotional impact of Oi is personal. It's a heart. The Road is Breaking My Heart is a bit meta, and it's a little bit, it's a little bit larger than just love.
Well, I'll tell you why I compare them, and that's not because of the content, it's the fact that they did something for me emotionally. The rest are, to my ears, fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's not so much the same emotional level. So yes, when you say there are only similarities, the fact that they're sad, it's important to me. It's important not just because I find emotion in things that are sad, but it just so happened that when they do sad, they do it really, really well.
I think they do everything really, really well. They do
Fair
the
enough.
fun stuff real good.
Fun stuff is good. It's just every once in a while I need more quirks in the fun stuff and whatnot, because you do have to avoid becoming one of the pack. And I don't know, certain songs they fall behind. I think this is a good place to start off with our reviews, with our final.
Would you like to go first, or
Not particularly.
okay?
Yeah, Sean will then.
I'll go. I kind of wish I'd found Carbon Leaf years ago. Like so many things Joe has brought to me personally on a musical level.
This is his second time on the show.
Yes, but he
Walk off the earth, steam-powered giraffe.
Oh,
This is
John's
the third
frequented
recommendation.
Nerdioke, which,
Yeah,
is
this
where
is-
we find
this is
Joe.
the third-
We don't only see Joe on the podcast.
Yeah.
You see me every Sunday. Well, you could if you come by.
Well, if I stopped working Sundays, I would.
that was a
Wait.
sad pitch.
No, I finally stopped working Sundays. That's why I started showing up again.
We also go later now. It's 10 to 2.
Oh no.
10 to 2 at the way station. That's a pitch.
That's a proper pitch.
I kind of wish I knew these guys beforehand because I would have liked to see this evolution. Even if they had started off at the little bit of taste that we got before this review of a little more poppy, it would have definitely fit my taste for the 90s.
Yeah.
For what they were producing. I mean, I would have definitely seen them as an opener for so many other bands. At
And
the
they
time.
were.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just seeing something here thematically that lets me forgive a little bit of what I was originally not enjoying, which was the fact that I kind of thought The Road is Breaking My Heart and Sad and Alone felt a little bit separate musically. And even I Love Victory, just they felt a little bit divergent from what the earlier part of the album was. But I definitely accept them a lot more now that I do see they kind of have a place in what is in this album. I think that there is a severe theme here, that there is not just an arc, but a real theme of a story of a one-night bender here. Starting at the party, getting to the party, talking to your friends, starting your beers, getting over the girl that just broke up with you, and then finding someone else to short-term replace it, and then realizing, well, there's still stuff to deal with. It's actually a personal experience I've had before with women. I might be projecting. I kind of don't think I am, though. But for that, everything was fun. That's the thing. Everything was fun. Even the stuff that was kind of like, I kind of heard it before, or I kind of expected. I mean, it's good. They're musicians. They're very talented musicians.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nothing here, besides maybe I Love Victory, that lyrically I have for complaints. I mean, some of it's deeper than others, but they're very good at writing stuff. There's a lot of positive here. And Oi is just, it touches me. Like, first time I heard it, it touched me in such a way that was
We are
really...
5.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
It touches you.
Yes,
Sorry.
it does. In a very, very deep, touching way. It's so
No, when he struggles,
beautiful.
he likes it. That's okay.
Oh dear God!
Thank you, guys.
You're trying to make a
Everybody.
sentimental point too, and we're
Thanks.
just totally
We're
bowling
crapping
it
all
over.
it.
Okay.
Now you know what it feels like.
I don't do that on air. I don't do it on air.
Anyway, your point. Make it.
It's
How do you
a
do fart sounds again? I'm sorry.
It's a 4.25. It really is over a 4-star. This is a really solid album. This is definitely something that I would listen through complete, which is what would really put it over just a standard like 3.5 to 4-star. I mean, the fact that I feel like a cohesive product has been produced here is what really sets it apart and makes it good for me.
Do you want to go next, Steve?
Yeah.
Matt's still decided.
No, I've decided, but Steve seemed to have something to express when you were explaining.
Well, it made me consider a couple things. Alright, here's my thing. I will admit that as I look into the theme here, it is a little bit more varied than I thought. And I am considering, I'm definitely entertaining your concept, John. I think it's there. At the same time, I'm also entertaining Joe's concept here. I think you all sort of want to attribute a theme to this, and I'll be honest. I'm not accustomed to building themes to this brand of music because so often in my experience, the music is segmented. It usually is very confined stories that exist in their own right, and what you take from it is what you take from that song alone. And then when you move on to the next, and that's another stage. It's a whole nother facet of their life and their career and their observations, which can be satirical, although I never thought to use that term for it until today. But often they're fun, lighthearted takes on life. A slice of life, in the Irish way. But I think I really have to go the Matt route on this one. I think I kind of need to look at the emotional draw for this album for me, which does boil down to those two songs, which is why I chose them as points for comparison, which in the end, you're right, comparing them is pointless.
Who's having trouble with words now?
I mean, I like it. Well, who knows? I'm not done yet. Oi and a broken and
The road is breaking my heart.
There you go. All right, those two tracks, they're important. They are very important to this album. They're very important for me, and I hate going this route, but it is. I mean, it is the Matt route. You said it before. Tracks that you would put on a playlist for interest. I might consider that for these two. I don't know. When I look at the fun tracks, they are fun and they serve a purpose. But I do sometimes think I can get them elsewhere. These guys are very talented, and I like their instrumentals. And the instrumentals might belong on a separate playlist, who knows. But there's something about a lack of musical cohesion on this album. I know that seems very strange, considering that front to back, yeah, sure, in general, it's got the same mood, it's got the right genre. I think I'm looking for some little it factor here, some it factor that binds this album together in not just their genre, but their style, their mark, their trademark. That's something that I'm missing a little bit. It's an indefinable sound, something that ties together just the fact that they play their instruments well and have really, really tasteful work-off solos and things like that. There's something there that is just, I don't know, it's missing, and it's really tough for me to describe that, except to say that that in the beginning half of this, I heard it. And from the middle to the last half of it, I don't think satire, as we're now calling it, is quite enough for me to hold it together. At that point, it seems like they sort of shaved off a little bit of their individuality to, even in their way of stating these various statements in a convoluted, segmented way, they fell off somewhere. That they de-individualized themselves for me by doing that. So I gotta put it down in the 3 range, but not far down in the 3 range. It's a 3.75 for me.
Okay. I'll attack this next and give Joe the last slot, as we often do with the guests.
Oh, you guys.
As we always do with the guest.
So
We're testy today.
I had not heard Carbon Leaf before this. This is my first experience with them, and I actually have actively said on social media, either I think on Crash Chords or through my personal page, that I'm actually actively looking for more folk music. Not because I don't like folk music, I just, for whatever reason, my iPod is short on folk, so I've been kind of actively looking for a lot of it. So this will easily make it onto my iPod. On the whole, I really love the record. I think that the fun moments are fun enough that I can forgive some of the flaws, and the poignant moments are poignant enough that it really gets to me. The problem with pure fun tracks is that there is a lack of emotional connection in places. There are holes. Other than fun, fun is an emotion unto itself, but kind of more of an empty, more effervescent, fleeting emotion. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. But I do get emotional connection from other tracks besides Oi and The Road is Breaking My Heart. I get a strong emotional connection to Ghost Dragon Attacks Castle. The movements it goes through, the instrumentation, it really takes me on a ride. It gets my heart pumping, and I really did connect with that track. She's Gone for Good this time, also I connected with. Even though it's a lighter side of it, I've been with someone who I wanted to disappear and wouldn't go away. So, therefore, it's kind of, it reminds me of that, but I can laugh on it now because I'm past that. I'm in a great place in my life. I'm happier than I've ever been. So I can laugh and look back on places like that where I was miserable and couldn't get out. A Song for the Sea, honestly, that's more of a greedy personal reason that song fills me with joy. I love Downeaster Alexa. It's probably in my top 5 Billy Joel songs, and probably my top 10 songs of all time. Just because it's one of those songs that I really connected with, even though I don't know shit about fishing, or being a fisherman, especially on those large-scale boats, like both of these kinds of songs sing about, or give the impression of.
I know a bit. My dad was a fisherman.
I don't care. But, I was just, oh no, I've actually upset John.
I'm going to punch you after the show.
Tell us a little bit about how your father was a
He
fisherman.
was a fisherman in Alaska doing salmon.
Was he really?
Yeah, really.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just being
No, that's for realsies.
For realsies?
Yeah, every summer.
Wow.
When he was like 16.
You get
about
pillows.
22.
Wow.
Oh, there you go.
But I really did connect with a lot on this album rather. The only songs that really left me wanting were February Details and The Fox and the Hare. I didn't really actually feel as emotionally disconnected as Steve did. That said, it boosts this album up a little higher for me. I don't know that I could tout it as much as John does. I think I'm still looking for more, and honestly, when it comes to music like this, if I want to be on the less folkier, more harder rock side of it, I would go for Flogging Molly. But if I want something leaning more towards folk, I would turn to Carbon Leaf. And the taste we got of their earlier stuff lends me to believe their earlier stuff is more 90s kind of Irish rock, which is a mix of stuff that I would actually have looked for in high school. So again, I may go back and check that out. So overall, this album for me is a solid 4. Stoic at a 4. I think that if the instrumental tracks were more exciting or engaging like the first one was, it would have really pulled this album together. And with kind of very vapid tracks like The Fox and the Hare and Victory, I know Victory is supposed to be, but that's just like when we reviewed the Katy Perry record and she made that song that's obviously dissing on Kesha, it still sounded like a Kesha song. So I still had to suffer through that, realistically. So it's the same idea. Yes, I Love Victory is satirical, but I don't really like the songs it's kind of ripping on. So, therefore, I thought it was okay.
I have one argument for the instrumentals.
Okay.
That's the time lapse of drinking.
Okay, great. It's an explanation.
It changes nothing.
It doesn't fix anything. It's an explanation, sure, but I still don't connect with them that much.
No, that's why I think that there's such a storyline change between each of them.
Oh, yeah, but that's fine. My issue with the instrumental tracks was that they didn't engage me the way the first one did. It had nothing to do with what it did to the story.
I want to get you good whiskey, and then we're going to sit down and listen to this.
I'm tempted to
sounds
ask
like a
on air what
challenge.
you consider is a good whiskey.
Actually, I do want to know. What do you consider good whiskey?
Oh, I gotta raid my brother's pantry. Actually, he's got.
I'll tell you
he's got a
straight out,
couple
I'm a Scots person, but maybe that wouldn't be appropriate.
He's got a couple of scotches that are like 30+ years and stuff like that he hides away from me.
Anyway,
18. Macallan
overall, it's a 4. I think that I'm excited to hear the newer stuff because they actually have an album newer than this. Which
They
I'm
have
going-
2 of them. 2 new albums.
so I'm going to go check those out. Joe, why don't you tell us where your review stands for this record?
All right. Well, I obviously brought Carbon Leaf to the show, so I do really, really enjoy Carbon Leaf, as you've heard me touting the entire show. This is one of my this is my favorite Carbon Leaf album that I've heard so far. I haven't heard the newest 2 yet. The other ones I really enjoy most of the songs on them. This one's my my favorite by far because of its heavier emphasis on the Celtic style. There are several songs I adore. I love to sing along to. I love Donnybrook Affair so much. I decided we need to do a song like that. That sounds so great as a traditional reel that we got to do that for Rascals and Rogues. And I can't wait to see what we get to play with and how we get to do it. Especially since we don't have the fiddle. We got to figure out how to fix that. So that that's part of the joy of Celtic music for me is the versatility of it and how you can play with it. And Carbon Leaf does. Like I said, I feel like they are a band that has this massive toolbox, and they know how to use every one of those tools, when to use it. It's a skill that many bands don't have because they're going for that flashpoint of like inundating the listener with everything they got. I think Carbon Leaf knows the difference. They know how to pick and choose when to use what. And, we were talking about there are some points where we'd like to hear more. Like, we would have liked to have heard the Penny Whistle finish out on that one song. I think it was on She's Gone.
The airier penny whistle.
The airier
Yes.
Penny Whistle.
Yep.
One part.
Yes. I like
And the bagpipes.
I like the fact that they play with different modes, different keys. We were making a joke in the song you may get to hear later, the Irish lad who plays an F, that I performed earlier today for you guys. And then we make the joke that in Ireland they have songs in D, songs in C, and songs in G. Or at least that's what it translates for Penny Whistle. But these are the traditional modes that you get to play in Celtic music. Carbon Leaf likes to play around with that a little bit, and I enjoy that.
Fun fact, they were in G and D, and I believe I heard E as well. I did not hear C, but I may have missed it.
I know I can
Q and
play.
E.
I can play. I play Penny Whistle. I practice my penny whistling while listening to these songs and just improving on top of stuff. My C whistle, my D whistle, my G whistle. Never my F whistle though. So, however that works.
I've never had a lecture that long. Wasn't even that long of a lecture, but on penny whistles in general. So
Yeah.
props.
Penny whistle's the one instrument I've ever picked up and actually had enough interest to and passion to keep with. I've been trying to learn guitar for the last 7 years, and I still can't strum more than 2 chords.
Passion for the penny whistle.
Passion for the penny whistle. Go figure. I don't know why, but I adore it. Back to
Esoterica.
Stop
abound.
interrupting his review. Hush.
back to Carbon Leaf. I just really enjoy. I love the instrumentals, especially. Those are all on I love how you mentioned playlists. Those are all on my a playlist of mine that I just put on for background music when I'm working around the house, doing any of my freelancing work, anything like that. And it's great motivation work to hear those jams going on. The really up songs like Bloody Good Bar Fight song, Donnybrook Affair, just rousing, get your blood pumping. I love them. Oi is actually on my 2004 recollection playlist. Every year I actually make a playlist of the year in review, and this is one of the chief numbers on this year's review. Because it has struck such a chord with me both in a personal way and as just such a wonderful, amazing song that I just absolutely adore. I actually rather like The Fox in the Hare because it's just kind of silly. Victory is amazing. I love the tongue-in-cheek, but it's still saying, yeah, rah rah siskumba. I dig it. And then Sad and Alone is just really kind of a fun way of looking at that feeling of utter despair. And then The Road Was Breaking My Heart is just that wonderful moment of complete and utter catharsis of letting everything in your heart out. And I adore songs like that, especially when, as we all do, you have those bad times and you have to get that out somewhere. And I rate this one at a 4.33. I gotta give it.
No one ever did that before.
Yep, I gotta give it a third of a star because I don't want to give it a half a star because I don't. There's definitely that third act problem definitely causes me some issues, and it's not as tight as I'd like it in some places. So I don't want to give it a 4.5, but it's definitely better than a 4.25 in my mind.
So 4.33. Okay.
Sorry to be the curmudgeon over here. That's why I figured I didn't want to.
I'm not screwing with your averaging system.
You're not that sorry, but
my only it's not so much a defense, just an explanation. Is that I do tend to be harsher with niche genres only because
and you have been in the past. You're consistent
as I've
with
said
your
in previous cases, they can get away with a lot.
We're reviewing it consistent in a way, and you have consistently reviewed more niche genres more harshly. So,
like you're a curmudgeon or something like that.
Anyway, my overall statement
at all.
my overall statement for this album, though, on my sliding, more general scale, is go buy it because honestly, there's not enough of this kind of music that really does something with the genre, and they do play with the genre enough that it's worth owning. I really think this is an album worth buying.
Even the sad tracks, even if you don't like to be sad and you don't want to listen to the sad tracks or those tracks that are...
I would honestly...
The fun is just fun.
I would easily rate this over more recent Dropkick Murphys records just because their sound really hasn't changed that much.
I reviewed the most recent one. It was terrible.
And I really think that this is worth having in your collection, especially if you like Irish folk.
I'm going to input something, though. I got to input something here.
Okay. That's what he does.
Well, just because you're saying, that there's a lot, that there's not as much of this out there right now, I will say this. Even though I talk, somewhat negatively about various areas of pop out lately, and believe it or not, Mumford & Sons was one of them. Because I thought that they had also persisted in the tropes here and there. Right. And yet I heard lots of similarities between this and Mumford & Sons. And I detected areas where this band does better, and areas where Mumford & Sons does better. And granted, they are the poppiest of pop. They've brought it beyond Celtic music to basically just encompass a little bit of indie, a little bit of basically anything of what they need to do in order to be popular. And yet, I still hear sometimes more of a... I think they at least were popularized because of the caliber of their... or the caliber of the singer, some little it factor that popularized them. I think that's what this band would need, in my personal view, to kind of bump them up into the public eye, the general public eye.
And the difference is, though, they're still together, so they might achieve that, whereas Mumford & Sons has gone
of course.
They have gone on an indefinite hiatus.
Who can predict any of that?
So of course.
Seriously.
But that's what I'm saying. So, and this isn't their newest record, so there might be room for expansion. Who knows? If after we listen to their newest record at some point, they might have achieved that goal. So we'll see.
To be fair, as we just said, this is the first band. I mean, this is the first album that they've done in this style. So maybe they're still experimenting.
Yeah. In relation to the Celtic-ness of this record, that had more syllables than it needed, I want to take some time now, before we wrap up the podcast, to talk to Joe a bit about something besides karaoke this time around. So we did mention earlier that you do work for the Tuxedo Renaissance Fair. My first question is...
Wait, I have a first question.
No, because I'm already asking my first question.
No, I have a first question. I've been raising my hand.
Oh, my lord.
Who is this friar, and what does he do? You mentioned a mad friar.
The Mad Monk, Brother Dementus. My character this year is Brother Dementus, and he is a monk on pilgrimage from his abbey. He has a multiple personality disorder.
Do you know what personalities you're giving him?
I haven't. As an actor, I've actually been holding off from making any definite decisions on my character. One of the things we do at the Renaissance Fair is, as an actor, you're given we get a role that we're going to be playing, and if we're basically given free, license to create this character any way we wish to, within standard reason, of course. So when I was told they want me to be this friar, this brother Dementus, they're like, you go where you want to with this one. And we have our rehearsal periods, which are really just times for us to get together and, as actors, play with each other and play with our different ideas and try and figure out what kind of characters get flushed out. A little background, behind-the-scenes information on how we create the magic.
Well, the reasoning for that, and here's the actual serious follow-up, is the fact that you're meant to interact with the populace who shows up there.
Yep.
Which is significantly different from most other forms of acting.
Yeah, everyone gets a script and you're on stage and there's a fourth wall. We don't have any of that. We are right up in... Our fourth wall is you.
Well, yeah, it's the idea of role play. And you seriously play a role.
Well, we don't want to just role play. We want these actors to come alive.
Right.
We want these characters to come alive. And that's really one of the things that I think makes the Renaissance Fair, especially the New York Renaissance Fair, so wonderful, is that our characters, we make sure that our characters, and we work very hard to make sure our characters really are flushed out in every way possible. And we have a wonderful staff that works with us all the way through, just helping us come up with different ideas, try out different things. They're very supportive. No idea is too crazy until you do it and you're like, that really doesn't work, does it? All right, maybe we should try something else. And believe me, we do that from time to time. Sometimes we just go ahead and do it for fun.
Right.
Yeah, and it's the most fun you can have, really.
If you're very detailed on your characters, and I imagine you're very detailed-oriented, considering your monk is from an abbey, I could throw out a random question, like, say, how far is that abbey away?
Oh, it's only about 45 miles.
But
But here's the thing. I totally pulled that out of my ass.
wow.
Which is the wonderful thing about improv, because if you believe it and you flushed out a character enough, you can... That's the joy of it. It's coming all at that very moment someone speaks and asks you that question. You're just coming up with the answer, and who knows if it's really there.
Well,
but
we
once
all
it's
know.
there, it's truth, and it's real, and you get to have so much fun with that.
Because it's a common fact that 86% of all statistics are made up on the spot.
Exactly.
Right. How long have you been working the Tuxedo Renaissance Fair?
This will be my fourth fair with the New York Renaissance Fair in the last 7 years. My first year fair was in 2009.
Oh, okay.
And I took 2 years off. 6 years, I don't know, whatever.
Okay.
I took 2 years off, came back to play Master Robert Cecil,
Yes.
who became Lord Treasurer, I think. It was 3 years ago. 3 years ago. I don't remember now. But he's a historical character from Elizabethan England. And last year I had the joy and pleasure of playing Sir Walter Raleigh.
I remember that.
Wow.
It was so much fun.
Yeah. There are great shots if you look Joe up online of great action shots from the chess match at the Renaissance Fair fighting. You fought Sword and Shield, didn't you?
That was 2 years ago as Master Robert Cecil versus great partner Christian Sokor, who's actually taken over for some fight direction on this year.
Oh, cool.
Very talented guy, and you can actually find him on. He actually was just in a reality TV show that has just been announced.
Uh-huh.
He is in The Quest.
Oh,
I think it's
cool.
on ABC.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up soon. So if you want to check out the New York Renaissance Fair's most awesome fight director, or one of the most awesome fight directors, he'll be on TV coming up soon. But yeah, that fight came from that year with him. So much fun.
And fighting and fight directing is another part of repertoire as well.
Yes, I'm an actor-combatant with the American Fight Directors, and I do that at the Renaissance Fair. And I'm also a more just beginning this part of my career as a fight consultant, fight choreographer, fight director. It's kind of hard to actually peg down a name for it because, the skill level, I am certainly not on par with my maestros who have been teaching me for the past years, and I'm certainly not as experienced as they are, so I don't feel quite bold enough to call myself a professional fight director.
Well,
but I do have I do this professionally, and I do choreograph and help present
effective and safe fights on stage.
Is it institutionalized so much that you achieve some kind of certificate that allows you to do such a thing for other people?
Yes and no, actually. The thing is with fight direction is that it's not with stage combat, is that it's not actually as well recognized in the theater world, in my point of view, as things such as dancing or even stage management. All these people have different groups that they work with, different groups to represent them, Actors Equity, so on and so forth. The Society of American Fight Directors is not quite as well incorporated as that, to provide stipends and protection for its members, but its main goal is to focus on how to enhance safe and effective violence on stage.
Sounds like it would be in high demand. I mean,
absolutely,
especially considering just the general summer movies alone. Just summer movies alone. We'll take that for an example.
Well, that's
a number of them that are just built around choreographed fights.
That's the funny thing, is that there's violence and gore and sex, of course, sells tickets. We specialize in creating that violence, and as everyone knows, the theater world is not the most well funded. So if you're trying to save money and cut corners by not having a fight director on set, we have loads of horror stories of the injuries that happen happen needlessly because someone who is able and skilled enough to stand there and say, "Be careful when you do this. It has to be done this way," wasn't there.
Plus, it's the added fact that your job is significantly more difficult than anybody who's being recorded doing this because, well, your actual viewing audience is right there. You don't have the benefit of things like CGI or takes. You have to get it right while they're watching every time.
Well, yes and no, because there's still also the ideas of, and when it comes to film, there's still the ideas of, you're on a time schedule. Things can be thrown in at a drop of a hat. There's this one great story about Army of Darkness where the fights were choreographed so wonderfully, that big melee scene at the end.
Yeah.
And the scene guys came in and put a big bonfire right in the middle. And the fighters it literally went, "All right, bonfire set. All right, rolling. 3, 2, 1." And the fighters are all like, "Holy crap, that's right where I'm going. What the heck am I supposed to do?" And the cameras were rolling and they had to go. And they pulled off that entire scene. I actually have to go back and watch it again since I've heard that story. I want to actually nitpick that one apart now because I just remember seeing it being like, "Yes, battle."
I don't know if you've had any experience in this so far, but I've heard that the New York Opera is actually looking to sort of revitalize their institution because what you said before about them the theater world not being well funded, apparently that's a big problem within opera as well because of how much money it takes to throw into an opera, and they're just sort of questioning whether there's the demand today because it's just not a very popular art form where at one point it was the most. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to sort of revitalize it and not conduct them in the same way they used to conduct operas with all the written choreography that stems from 100, 150 years ago. They're trying to modernize it, trying to make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more flashy, and I think a lot of that stuff offers similar types of stunts like what you just described.
Yeah.
So
I actually am familiar with...
they may very well have you in demand.
I hope so someday. That would be wonderful. I actually know the gentleman who's working with them now, or was working with them recently, Nigel Poulton, who actually, he's talked a lot about his experience. He comes from Australia with the Society of Australian Fight Directors. He's a brilliant guy. A lot of fun. And I had heard him talking at one point, or I think I had maybe read it in New York Times, about how he was taking those tropes, so to speak, or these long existing, typecast fights, and using them, but also modernizing them. And so that's a lot of times what the kind of creativity we're doing is. We don't want to betray the idea and the spirit of opera, so we'll keep those things that you expect there, but we'll also do them in different ways.
Yeah, it's something that I was always sort of a little bit on the fence on, but at the same time, you do have to accept can it really hold up? It's the first time. Very often, I claim when it comes to movies, that people should really look back and not always expect everything to be modernized, and that you need the new reimagination or reboot of this old great story. But then when you think about something opera, when it's dated so far back that maybe it really is out of touch. You want to make sure that the art form stays in touch with the common. Otherwise, you will lose the art form.
Right. Well, the first form of stage combat was actually very standardized moves, and it was you call out like, this is the drunken fight, and it was the same 5 moves repeated as needed. Since then, obviously, we've come a long way. And now the Society of American Fight Directors is here, in America at least, to promote that idea of creativity, and also of taking an active role in making sure people have these skills and abilities before they get on camera or on stage.
Now, is this New York exclusive, or is it broad-based around America?
The Society of American Fight Directors?
Yes.
It's a national group. They're based in Nevada. And we have different regions all over the place. New York is one of the larger centers, as would be expected. LA being the other one.
Yeah.
And actually, right now is the national workshop, where we have thousands upon thousands of fighters from across the nation get together in North Carolina, and all train with different fight masters and fight directors and certified teachers from all across the nation. Wow. And it's all a 3-week intensive where they will test their skills, learn new things, and at the end of it, they certify as basic actor-combatants, advanced actor-combatants, so on and so forth. What the society does not do is actually certify your skills per weapon. What we do is declare a proficiency. So they basically, because certification kind of gets into that legal area, and a weird, gray zone. Proficiency is to say that you, as an actor, have the ability to use this weapon in the proper technical sense. We have there are 2 levels you can reach with that. You can get basic pass, which is you know how to use this weapon, and then there's recommended pass, which is basically saying you know how to use this weapon and use it as a character, as a full-blown, fleshed-out person on stage who may or may not be martial.
So you can integrate it and beyond just teaching someone, a layman, how to use it.
Right, which is the lesser problem we're facing, I think, nowadays, or have been facing lately, is that fights are now they're very strong, but they don't look quite right because sometimes the actor will drop the character they're playing in order to effectively
I find this problem a lot.
Put out those
historical dramas. I find that problem.
Yeah, and it's a big problem because you don't want to break that illusion. You want to see Romeo really be able to whip out a sword and kill Tybalt, even though he's not as trained as Tybalt. So how does that happen? That's our craft, is how to blend character and weapon use, how to create a creative and interesting dialogue and story of violence, but do it safely so that you can do that 8 times a week and not ever hurt yourself.
To switch gears a little bit, I want to talk a bit about bringing it back to music, although the opera connection was music related. True. The group
I didn't even think of that when I said it.
The group you were singing with because you are an actor-combatant, but you are also now a music director for a musical group at the New York Rennaissance Fair, which is
Rascals and Rogues.
And so it's how many people are in the group?
We are a 5-person group. Last year I was in the group, just one of the members, and there were 8 of us. This year we are down to 5, but I think we're a very strong 5. I think we can carry it just fine. Thank you very much.
Is it the same members as last year, or has it changed up a bit?
We've changed up a bit. Every year the New York Renaissance Fair cast changes. A lot of our members find amazing new jobs because of their experience with the fair or on their own. Sometimes other things come up and you have to, deliberate your priorities. Very rarely is it ever anyone leaving on bad terms or because they don't want to be. That place is just too magical, and
right.
As much as we love performing, we also just love being there.
Sure.
So, this year we've got 2 returning members, myself and the creepy bard.
Okay.
Who is exactly what he sounds like, and he's very good at it. That's weird. Anyway, we're bringing in 3 new members: 1 veteran of the 2 veterans of the fair from last year, and 1 for the last 10 years. Our improv director, Don Kilcoyne, will be joining us.
I know Don.
He's
I'm friends with
amazing.
him. Sarah's introduced me to Don and Kelly, so I am friends with them. They're good people.
Oh god, those people are great. I love them.
Yeah. I happen to know a lot of fair folk, either through Sarah or through you. I've met Joe and Lindsay. And
Don
other
is
people.
our improv director this year. He's taken on a quite the hefty job in trying to get 40, 60, 80. How many people are in our cast now? We keep growing. It's great. And so talented, too. Don has the pleasure to work with all of us and be harassed by all of us. Hope you're enjoying that one, Don. He gets to take this group of ragtag individuals and hone these talents that we're bringing out and just make us a village. Oh. This year he'll be playing our mayor, Mayor Bartholomew Bombadil.
Nice.
And he will be our lead percussion for Rascals and Rogues.
Very cool.
Because man, that man can drum.
And so the song that you brought us today that we did record, little inside magic, we recorded earlier because we wanted to get the sound just right because it's actually a unique setup for our recording, is a song that you typically don't sing, but you play penny whistle on.
Yes, this is a song I do penny whistle. One of the other members sings this one. It's actually an original song for Rascals and Rogues. It was written by one of our members last year, David Anthony.
Okay.
Very, very talented writer. Very funny writer. He's got some great stuff. We do 2 of his songs now. We do The Irish Lad Who Plays an F, which I played earlier for you guys today. And we did. He also wrote God and the Little Children, which if you get a chance to hear it at the fair, I'm sorry if I've offended you. That one I get to sing.
So we're going to tack that on at the end of the podcast. Steve will work his editing magic as he usually does. I just want to take a moment to thank you, Joe, for coming back to the podcast.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me back.
It's a pleasure to have you here again and to talk about something besides karaoke, although I do love talking about karaoke.
I just like talking about me.
Really quick, tell the people when the fair is, how long it's running.
Hear ye, lords and ladies, come ye to the New York Rennaissance Fair this summer, every weekend in August and September, and Labor Day Monday. You can find more information at www.nyrenfair.com. That's Renfair, R-E-N, Fair, F-A-I-R-E.com.
Thank you for that, Joe. It's great having you back.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Be there and be back.
Yes.
Thank you again, everybody, for listening. Of course, you know the spiel. If you want to recommend something, email, post on the Facebook, post on the site, comment, questions, donate. We're trying to expand the show constantly, get more guests, do some traveling, see more shows. Please donate. It'll make the podcast better. We love having you as fans, and we thank you for your undying support. Because if we killed you with our podcast, I'd feel bad. And we're also working on expanding our YouTube comment. Look for this week. I finally finished fine-tuning the Afterbirth Monkeys live performance of Took Your Boyfriend, the video version. That should be up this week, as well as we are constantly expanding our podcast library on YouTube. So you can stream it there instead of having to download it or stream it from the website if YouTube's your bag. Before we close and hear some penny whistles, Steve, do you have a fan mail / spam for us this week?
Hello. I feel that I saw you visited my site, so I got here to return the prepper. I'm returning to find issues to enhance my website. Guess it's good enough to make use of a few of your ideas. By cafe.
Honestly, I think...
Cafe.
I think you messed up on that inflection. You made it sound a little bit too downtrodden. I would have gone with a rising finale.
A few?
Yeah.
He's only making use of a few of our ideas. He's really selective. He's kind of snooty.
Steve knows snooty.
I know.
Takes one to know one.
Wow.
And
Snarky
we're
McSnark
friends.
pants.
We're friends.
And Joe, can I task you with our sign-off? Do you remember it from last time?
Wait.
Or should I write it down?
No. You forgot the most important thing of our finale.
Oh, yeah. I forgot because it's actually Abby Normal. We are not doing an album review next week. Next week is our 100th episode.
Yeah, you might have noticed you're sitting on 99, so if you can count, you know.
So we've been doing this for 2 years. We celebrate.
Abby Normal?
Yes.
Abby Normal.
Yes. It's a quote. Young Frankenstein.
Oh, that's right. I don't like that movie.
Well, because you have no taste.
You don't like that movie?
No, I don't like Frankenstein.
Anyway, it's our 100th episode.
We're not friends anymore.
We've been doing it for 2 years.
Yay.
That's the 2-year mark, so we're going to do something special for you guys next week. After
Are you
that,
going to record the podcast naked?
We do that anyway.
they wouldn't know. So we're definitely going to do something special, but I'm not going to share what that is yet because, I want it to be a surprise.
It's our season 2 finale.
It's season 2 finale, yes.
We're too busy sitting naked podcasting. Pass me that spa brush, Joe. Yeah.
First of all,
Rub
it's
it
called
in.
a loofah.
Rub it in.
Second of all, you should have brought your own loofah.
I like sharing loofahs with Steve.
Not when you find out where he's been putting
He also
the loofah.
likes saying loofah.
Loofah's a fun word to say.
Loofah.
Anyway. So as a thank you to you guys, we're going to do another special like the 50th for the 100th, something along those lines. So come back next week to check that out. Then it's back to our regular schedule after that. Joe, will you please take us out with our signature in your best version of your character from the Renaissance Fair?
Or one of the versions of his character.
From the Renaissance Fair.
My good lords and ladies, music doth be life, and life doth be good. Fare thee well. Before a man had crossed the sea, before the western world was free, an Irishman said, sing with me, together we will pick a key. I'll sing in D, then I in C, when I play high I'll play in G. Well, laddie's good, it's all agreed, forever we will use these three. They Irish, they may fight and fret, at times will drink themselves to death, but the strangest one I'd ever met was the Irish lad who played in F. He jumped up on the bar to play, and asked for neither drink nor pay. So handsome that I thought he fey was the Irish lad I met today. The Irishmen all dropped their beers and covered up their Irish ears. Said, that's a tune I won't have near. Get that bastard out of here. He'd blow the guitar and strum the horn. His parents died before he was born. Ate supper at the crack of morn. Always in red was he adorned. The Irishmen were quite consumed, and in the air a danger loomed. Alas, the Irish lad resumed to play an unfamiliar tune. He'd dance for the blind and sing for the deaf. His name was Paddy, but call him Jeff. The strangest boy I'd ever met was the Irish lad who played in F. The Irishman had quite enough, and grabbed the young boy by the scruff, and threw him off the nearest bluff. Perhaps they were a bit too rough. But quickly downward life he left. Last word we heard him say was, yet in our way we'll mourn the death of the Irish lad who played in F.